The basketball quickly falls to the ground and bounces up again. A new ghost was discovered in the Nanan area last night. The guy puts his hand forward and dribbles the basketball. The ghost can be seen from 12 to 3, dancing and throwing a basketball from side to side. A character is seen deftly hitting the ball on opposite sides of himself. According to the investigation, the ghost's abilities are mainly related to the sound of his basketball shot. The guy takes the ball in his hand and swings it to hit. So far, 13 people have been killed, and authorities have dubbed the ghost the basketball ghost. You can see the distraught face of the ghost and the same crazy grimace on the ball in his hand. A voice warns the students to be careful at night. A number of multi-story buildings are visible. Someone snaps their finger, breaking off a piece of chalk. A teacher in glasses throws chalk forcefully across the classroom. She turns to Jong Zio and asks why he has so much audacity to sleep at such a time. The chalk turns over in the air. It hits the student directly in the face, causing him to lean away and raise his head. Jiang Zio shouts to the whole class. The teacher folds her arms across her chest and with a dissatisfied face asks the character what needs to be done if he meets a ghost at night. A guy with white hair, wearing a short jacket, sits up at his desk, repeating part of the question. An expression of incomprehension appears on his face. He thinks about how he ended up in a class unfamiliar to him, if before he just lay in bed and read horror films. Jiang Zio assumes that he has been reborn. The teacher clutches the chalk in her hand, raising it in front of her. She demands to answer the question faster. Jiang Zhao furrows his eyebrows in confusion and quickly explains that ghosts themselves are not capable of harming others. Basically, they influence the human psyche with the help of words, as a result of which the person falls into delirium and goes into the deep forest to be eaten by other ghosts. At the moment of explanation, a shot appears of the main character moving towards a ghost resembling a skeleton. He then passes by and the ghost turns around in surprise. The monster falls to his knees in despair, reaching out his hand to the departing guy. Jiang Zhao concludes that you should just pass by if you encounter a ghost at night. The teacher extends her hand forward, making an approving gesture, and asks the student to sit down and listen carefully. She talks about how a student from a nearby class was killed by a night ghost some time ago. She asks the students to be careful. Jiang Zhao folds his hands on the desk, looking around. He reflects that all the memories of the previous owner of this body flooded into his brain. The character, in horror, imagines pictures of ferocious monsters with fangs and glowing red eyes. The main character thinks that he is in a parallel world, and the only difference from his past life is that this world is full of spirits, demons, and monsters. He then imagines people with magical powers and weapons fighting monsters. Jiang Zhao thinks about how everyone here is capable of awakening their own spirit weapon, becoming a spirit lord, facing ghosts, and even killing them. The bell rings in the classroom. Someone turns to the main character. He pats Jiang Zhao on the shoulder and says that an instructor will come from Tianji Palace to personally test the disciples' spiritual weapons. The main character turns around and sees a classmate in front of him with his arms spread wide. The guy repeats Jiang Zhao's earlier words that if he is elected to Tianji Palace and becomes a high-ranking spirit lord, then he will reach the pinnacle of life. The main character hesitantly states that his comrade is afraid to go outside even at night. Then there can be no talk of becoming a lord of spirits and fighting ghosts. Jiang Zhao raises his eyebrows in surprise. He asks again about spiritual weapons. Several students stand in the corridor. A man with shaved temples walks through the school. The students discuss yesterday's game and its results. One of them notices a man passing by, a look of amazement on his face. He bows deeply as the man moves down the hallway. His friend looks at his friend in surprise and asks what kind of man this is and why he bows to him. A guy with blonde hair pulls him back and says that this man was wearing the coat of arms of the Tianji Palace. The man confidently enters the office. He straightens his yellow tie and looks around, revealing that his name is Chen Fan and he is from the Tianji Palace, a third-level spirit lord. He also adds that he is in charge of conducting spiritual weapon testing. Jiang Zhao frowns, looking ahead in confusion. He thinks about how strong Chen Fan's aura is. The man takes the crystal in his hands, and a picture of a man surrounded by a flow of energy and various weapons appears in his imagination. Chen Fan explains that people are born with an innate spiritual weapon, which is a reflection of their soul, and can be controlled by spiritual power. Chen Fan says that the stone in his hand is a spiritual stone, a jewel obtained from a ghost. It contains a lot of spiritual energy. This will help students stimulate the innate spiritual weapon in their body in advance if they simply hold it in their hand. The teacher picks up the list while standing next to Chen Fan. She calls students from the list. At this moment, the main character leans on his hand and thinks that this world is very dangerous, and that to survive in it you need to become stronger. For this you need to have a strong spiritual weapon. One of the disciples approaches Chen Fan. A blue glow lights up in his hand. The guy's eyes widen and he frowns. A hole appears in the student's heart, from which a blue stream of aura emerges, holding the stone. The character says that it is flattened and resembles a roadside stone. The student turns to Chen Fan. The whole class starts laughing at the guy, pointing at him. Chen Fan screams sharply, his mouth wide open and his hand on his side. He asks the students not to laugh as this weapon is high level, and has a total of 7 skill holes. Jiang Zhao narrows his eyes carefully and ponders the last phrase he said. Chen Fan extends his hand to the side. A blue glow appears in his palm. The man says that students need to remember that the type of spirit weapon is not that important, as the most important thing is the skill holes. A sword appears with 5 holes in the blade and multicolored balls around it. Chen Fan pulls his weapon to the side and addresses the class. He says that many have probably played League of Gods and Ghosts. He explains that a character with 3 skills loses to a character with 7 skills. The teacher explains that this game is a MOBA game at the national level in this world. Jiang Zhao raises his hand to his chin and thoughtfully thinks that the more holes a spiritual weapon has, the more soul pearls it can absorb. The teacher puts her hand to the side and frowns, telling them to remain quiet and go out one by one. Jiang Zhao looks boredly at Chen Fan's weapon called the 5-hole ordinary sword. The man then shows the class a long staff with 6 skill holes, but the main character falls asleep at that moment. Afterwards, scissors with 4 skill holes are visible, and Jiang Zhao finally falls asleep. The voice sharply says that Jai Hai has a high-ranking weapon with 7 skill holes. The main character raises his head and looks ahead in amazement. He remembers that Jai Hai has been causing him trouble ever since the main character stopped him from harassing his classmate. In the memories, an image of the main character appears with a broom in his hands, aimed at another guy, with a girl standing behind him. Jiang Zhao frowns and looks ahead irritably. He reasons that it is very disadvantageous for him to awaken good weapons from Jai Hai. The guy with dark hair holds a rifle with a scope in one hand. He rejoices, his classmates laugh with him, and the teacher praises him. The protagonist's friend hits the desk with his hand and asks how such a person got a high-class weapon with 7 holes. Jiang Zhao folds his arms over his chest and says that there is nothing wrong with this, since for him it is very simple. The main character is called. He stands up from his desk directly in front of Jai Hai. A guy with dark hair ironically wishes good luck and says to hope that reality will be more favorable to him than the game League of Gods and Ghosts. At these words, he throws his head back and looks down. The main character grins. A shadow falls on his face. He notices that this is being told to him by a man who reached the top thanks to donations. Jiang Zhao frowns and smirks, turning his head. He states that even with a low-grade 3-hole weapon, he will be able to trample Jai Hai into the mud. The guy bares his teeth, looking at the main character who approached Chen Fan. Jai Hai yells at the main character not to try to appear brave and threatens that he will be immediately torn apart by the ghosts after awakening the spiritual weapon. The main character picks up a stone and looks at it. He thinks about what kind of weapon will be reflected in the soul of the Reborn. A black hole appears under Jiang Zhao's feet. A long, sharp sword with many curves emerges from the main character's chest. The main character lists all the positive aspects of the weapon and hopes that it is a high-quality sword. However, Chen Fan states with a serious face that it is an ordinary weapon with 3 skill holes. This phrase amazes Jiang Zhao. He walks past the class laughing at him. Jai Hai throws his hand forward, pointing at Jiang Zhao and mocking him. Other students make offensive remarks. Everyone turns to look at Jiang Zhao, who is sitting with his face down. The main character looks at the weapon with a sad face, not understanding why it is so beautiful, but has only 3 skills. He notices a black aura coming from the blade. She instantly disperses throughout the office. Jiang Zhao looks at her in surprise and thinks about why the others don't see this. The fel is built into an inscription that says that the character is confused and that he needs to look down at his shadow. The main character moves to the side at his desk and watches as a black clot of liquid forms instead of his shadow. Jiang Zhao looks at her in confusion. He clenches his teeth and sees the shadow creep further and zigzags, acquiring a malevolent grimace. Jiang Zhao frowns in horror. The inscription changes. Now it says that the main character has doubts about the reality of what is happening, and that he wants to find evidence that it is true. The main character nervously looks at the inscription. Sweat flows down his cheek. He wonders if his shadow can now really devour ghosts and gain their abilities. He looks back at his shadow, from which dark vortices emanate, and thinks that he can take any ability for himself and the holes will not become a limitation. Constellations and claws appear in the shadows. The main character thinks that for now he is able to hunt fairly strong ghosts, and will eventually become a master of spirits. At this moment, Jiang Xiao grins, and a shadow resembling a monster appears behind him. He lists the skills he would like to acquire, including attack, defense, and drills. The action moves to the stadium. A red flag can be seen flying over the school. In a huge stadium, students line up in rows, and someone's voice asks the students of the third group to come up. Chen Fan stands on the stage and addresses the students, saying that everyone has awakened their innate spiritual weapon and become a revered spirit lord. The man's face is stern. He frowns and looks sternly in front of him. He asks the question of what exactly people rely on to fight ghosts. The main character stands among a crowd of other students who are talking among themselves. Jai Hai throws his hand up and replies that the main thing is the spiritual weapon. The other guys turn to each other and confirm his words. They say the more skill holds the better. Chen Fan spreads his arms and opens his mouth wide, shouting that courage is the right answer. Comrade Jiang Xiao raises his eyebrows and laughs at Jai Hai, saying that someone likes to be the center of attention. The crowd of students looks at Chen Fan in surprise as he continues his speech. He says that the power of ghosts is that they are dead and cause fear that has been ingrained in the deepest depths of human consciousness for thousands of years. Chen Fan states that he has seen many talented and gifted spirit masters with more than 10 skills, and they have a great future ahead of them. Chen Fan raises his hand in front of him and frowns. He continues his speech and says that all these people encountered a weak wandering spirit and were afraid, so the courage to take up arms was already lost. He asks the question whether he can trust such a lord of spirits with his life. The main character frowns and looks ahead. He internally agrees with Chen Fan. Jiang Xiao notices a girl with dark hair and bows on her uniform in front of him. She says that this is all boring since she will become a high-ranking spirit lord anyway. Chen Fan's face darkens and he clenches his fists. He states that the test includes not only the awakening of spiritual weapons, but also a practical part. At the same time, he raises his head and looks down at the students. The man spreads his arms out to the sides and says that if the students really want to be able to fight the ghosts, then the first step is to muster up the courage to face them. He warns that encountering ghosts in any form is life-threatening, so he cannot guarantee safety. The crowd of students is excitedly indignant. They shout phrases about how they cannot fight without skills immediately after awakening the weapon. Comrade Jiang Xiao turns to him with a question. The main character frowns and looks directly at his friend, asking what he is afraid of. Jiang Xiao states that the Tianji Palace Master is here to help in case of emergency. The most that ghosts can do is scare. The main character purses his lips, looking sternly forward. He thinks that if he can't even pass this obstacle, then how is he going to become a spirit lord who fights stronger ghosts? Chen Fan addresses the students while the teacher watches from the side. The man states that anyone who is afraid can leave, as this is not a reason for shame and thus the losses in the ghost world will be reduced. Two guys emerge from the crowd, one with a determined look, the other with a bored look. They say that their lives are not a toy and that they do not have to fight ghosts. The guy with short hair looks at what is happening in fright. Violet eyes of a girl with dark hair are visible. The main character frowns and looks decisively forward. Jai Hai looks disapprovingly at those who have left. The main character stands in front of his comrade, with his hand in his pocket. Chen Fan turns to him. He watches Jiang Xiao with interest in his eyes and says that 300 people have already been reduced to 100. And the guy has strong nerves. Chen Fan turns to face the students and waves as he leaves, while the teacher bows. The man says to go to the school gates and that he hopes to see them again inside the ghost world. Jai Hai puts his hands behind his head and addresses the main character with the words that he dared to die. Jiang Xiao folds his arms and replies with a smile that Jai Hai should pass the test without any problems. His comrade, surprised, asks why he is saying good things about his opponent. Jai Hai furrows his eyebrows and says that Jiang Xiao should kneel in front of him given the situation, but he warns that he will not cover for him in the ghost world. Jiang Xiao gives a thumbs down and explains that he meant that the ghosts would run away from Jai Hai in fear. The guy gets angry, his face darkens, and the main character and his friend leave. A crowd of students moves to the school gates. Chen Fan stands in front of the students at a distance and explains that they have been studying ghosts for a year and know a lot about them. Their destination is a haunted place inhabited only by wandering ghosts. As long as they keep their heart, even without relying on spiritual weapons, they will be able to come out safe and sound. The main character stands among other students and looks directly at the mentor. Someone notices that these are just wandering ghosts. There are 3 danger levels for ghosts: white, green, and red. A picture of monsters appears. One sits on a pillar against the backdrop of the full moon. The other stands nearby. Night ghosts are at best a white tier threat, while powerful red tier ghosts can run rampant inside cities. A huge monster appears, destroying the city. Jiang Zhao frowns, his yellow eyes looking forward. He reasons that some high-ranking ghosts could cover the sky and destroy the city. The main character exhales with a relaxed face and says that since they are fighting wandering spirits, it will be enough for them to walk in the sun for a couple of days, since ghosts do not have yin energy. The schoolyard with many trees around is visible. The voice announces that whoever kills the most ghosts before the end of the challenge will receive the green ghost's soul pearl. At this moment, Chen Fan extends his hand with a green ball in it. The crowd looks at the sphere with jubilant faces. They reason that the pearl of the soul of the green ghost is worth tens, or even hundreds of thousands. They become convinced that it is possible to receive a reward for a practical task. A girl with dark brown hair and bows emerges from the crowd. She declares that the green level soul pearl is hers. The crowd looks at her. The students whisper. They say that this is Bai Kaiming from the first group and that she awakened the 10-skill whole celestial artifact. The main character rubs his hands with a confident face and says that he will not give her first place. The action moves to the northern outskirts of the city. 2 buses and a whole group of people are visible in the forest. The main character looks ahead in bewilderment, raising his eyebrows. He asks if the test will take place here. Behind him stands a group of students around a girl. They invite Bai Kaiming to team up with them. She states that she doesn't care, but doesn't want them to stand in her way. You can see the natural landscape, trees and stones. Comrade Jiang Zhao turns to him with a frightened face and invites him to walk together. The main character looks at him and declines the offer, saying that he is going to go alone as it is more efficient. He looks down at his feet while the others confer. The main character thinks that he should hide the existence of the shadow. Chen Fan addresses the students, stating that they have been given jade bottles into which the ghost's pearl will flow after defeating him. Students hold bottles in their hands, looking at them. The man asks them to take care of the safety of the bottles. He throws his hand up and announces that they are going to the mountains. The students look ahead in horror, their faces grim. They suggest walking together more often. Since this forest is creepy, many go home. The main character takes his first steps down the slope below. He thinks about going first. A group of disciples and Chen Fan watch as Jiang Zhao goes downstairs. The mentor looks at the departing Jiang Zhao with a serious face and thinks that he has a brave heart and that he could be very useful, but his qualifications leave much to be desired. Jai Hai spits, with a dissatisfied face, declares that Jiang Zhao wants to be the center of attention and wishes him dead. Bai Kaiming steps forward to the front of the crowd and announces with a gloomy face that it is time to move forward. Green clots of energy glide through the forest. They spread like smoke across the grass and hover in the air around the main character. He reassures himself that these are just wandering ghosts. A blue glow slides between the branches. Someone calls Jiang Zhao. He turns around sharply with a surprised face. He puts out his gloved hands, past which a blue stream slips. The main character jumps to the side, taking up his sword. He thinks about how he has already stumbled upon a ghost so quickly. A monster appears behind Jiang Zhao in the form of a huge old woman in a kimono. She puts her hand on his shoulder. Jiang Zhao freezes in fear. You can see the scary face of a ghost, a row of crooked teeth. The old woman asks where her eye went. The main character lowers his head. Sweat rolls down his face. He calms himself. Jiang Zhao swings the blade in his hand and throws his other hand forward. He strikes, cutting the ghost's body. The smoke clears around Jiang Zhao. It concentrates around a blue ball from which a glow emanates. The main character looks at him in fear. He holds out a bottle from which smoke comes out. With a jubilant face, Jiang Zhao holds a dagger in his hands, reasoning that he already has the first pearl. He praises his weapon for its convenience, but says it would be better if there were more holes. Suddenly his attention is drawn to swirls of smoke around him. A face resembling a mask appears among the fog. The ghost reproaches the main character for being alive. The full body of a ghost emerges from the fog, claiming that his stomach is burning in pain. Then another creature appears with a baby in its arms. It asks where its child is. The main character finds himself surrounded by a whole crowd of ugly ghosts. He frowns in fear and clenches his teeth. Jiang Zhao doesn't understand where so many wandering ghosts came from. He sees black streams coming out of the mouth, eyes and nose of one of them. This is then repeated with another monster. After shadows pierce the face of the third ghost, black tentacles rise from the ground under the protagonist's feet. Jiang Jiao spreads his legs wide, the tentacles restraining his limbs. The main character bares his teeth in rage. He feels strong negative energy. Many blue luminous lines suddenly appear. Jiang Jiao attacks the tentacles with a dagger and cuts them. He strikes the ghosts quickly, leaving a long blue trail. The main character lands and the smoke clears around him. He collects the spheres into a flask from which steam emanates. Jiang Jiao sits down near the tree and looks at the bottle. He reasons that wielding the dagger required a lot of spiritual energy, but it was worth it. The main character notices that the bottle is almost a third full. He turns his head to the side and frowns, thinking about Bai Kaiming and Jai Hai acting as a group. A picture emerges in his imagination of how the squad serves the girl. Jiang Jiao says that if these two focus resources on themselves, then he will never catch up with them. The main character thoughtfully raises his hand to his chin and looks at the flask, thinking about the fact that he wants to get this pearl of the green level soul. He leans over the bottle as his shadow turns back into liquid. Dark drops soar upward above his head. An inscription appears saying that the normal speed of eliminating wandering ghosts is not very good, so Jiang Jiao must go deep into the forest and eliminate the white ghosts, and also that there is a white misty ghost lurking in the cemetery. The main character moves away from the inscription in horror and says that he is not going to go into the depths of the forest for the sake of a white-level ghost. Jiang Jiao stands near the tree and looks at the shadow taking on its own form. The character wonders if his shadow is conscious and is deliberately driving him to action. He is convinced that they are trying to deceive him. With a calm face, the main character turns away from the clot of black shadows. He says that he is going to leave because white-level ghosts are capable of causing harm to human lives and can only be dealt with by first-level spirit lords, and he is not looking for death. The main character puts his hands in his pockets and leaves. Shadows appear before his face. They line up in incomprehensible symbols. A new inscription is formed that the shadow understands the protagonist's suspicions, but if he leaves, he will lose the chance to get the green pearl and fail the Tianji test. The main character looks at the inscription, frozen indecisively. He raises his face and frowns slightly, declaring that he and the shadow are having verbal battles. He throws up his hands in despair and asks for advice on how he should defeat the white misty ghost. Jiang Jiao notes that if he returns, at worst he will lose the green level ghost pearl. But if he does as the shadow says, he will lose his life. A shadow is visible in the grass, from which new letters rise up. She says that the character is trying to show off, but to defeat the white ghost, you need to use the shadow. Dark streams rise into the air. From the shadow, the image of a person is formed. The main character looks at him in surprise. The shadow opens its mouth with fangs and says that he needs to go north and find a white misty ghost in the cemetery. The figure disappears into Jiang Ziao's shadow. He looks down thoughtfully and frowns, reasoning that he will need to find out the origin of the shadow when he gets out of the forest. Now he must follow the clues and get the green level soul pearl. The action moves to a forest cemetery. Fog is visible between the bare trees. The main character stands between the graves, holding a dagger in his hand. The fog is thickening around him. He feels it intenses. Jiang Jiao raises the dagger and makes a motion with his hand. A hand with claws appears from the fog. The main character notices this. His pupils narrow. He understands that something is wrong. A large collection of wandering ghosts with strong feelings of resentment and hatred, often inhabiting cemeteries, with the ability to summon large numbers of spirits and hide their true bodies in a white fog that blurs vision and kills people, is the white fog ghost method. At this moment, a huge ghost appears behind the back of the main character as if made of fog. Birds are seen flying in the sky. A stripe of blue light suddenly appears. Bai Kaiming appears with a sword in his hand. She cuts the huge monster in half. The girl frowns, leans forward, and screams for her partner to quickly take the pearl of the soul. The guy awkwardly runs forward, collecting the fog into a bottle. Bai Kaiming bows his head, watching intently. She thinks that, as expected, wandering ghosts are also divided into strong and weak, and this one released a lot of fog after death. She regrets wasting a lot of spiritual energy. The girl is given a flask, and her other partner with glasses appears. He calls Bai Kaiming the most talented person in the school and asks if this ghost had a white level. The girl lowers her head disdainfully and reaches out to the bottle. She asks how long until sunset. The guy raises his hand with his watch and says there are about 2 hours left. Bai Kaiming takes out his sword, sits down near a tree, and tells him to take a break. Her partner comes closer, smiling uncertainly. He says that the jade bottle is almost full and that there is no need to stop. Bai Kaiming shields himself with his sword and frowns with displeasure. She says that everything must be perfect and that she will not only take first place, but will beat everyone else by an overwhelming advantage. The thorny branches of the vine are noticeable. They surround Jai Hai's squad from all sides. His partners hold weapons and look at the main one in horror, suggesting that they have entered the lair of wandering ghosts. They suggest leaving this place. He agrees, and they quickly run away from the forest. They see the edges of trees against the dark sky. The squad admits that they are tired. Jai Hai turns to his teammates and says that they have already moved away from the cursed place, so they can rest. Natural landscape. You can see trees and stone, behind which you can hear rustling. Jai Hai turns around with horror on his face. A guy with a short haircut appears behind the stone. He convinces him that he is Zhang Ba, and asks not to shoot. Jai Hai lowers his rifle, smiling mockingly. He says he was about to shoot. He asks if he is separated from Jiang Xiao. The guy puts his hand forward and hunches, saying that they didn't work together. Team Jai Hai mocks Zhang Ba. They convince the leader not to waste time on him. Zhang Ba lowers his face, smiling pitifully. Jai Hai invites him to come with them. He turns to the new team member and looks over his shoulder. He is advised to blame Jiang Xiao for abandoning him. Zhang Ba knits his eyebrows pitifully and trembles fearfully, telling how scared he is in this forest. He mentally turns to the main character and asks why he didn't go with him, because this way they could at least look out for each other. He asks where Jiang Xiao is. At this moment, half of the moon is no longer visible. The main character jumps to the side, falling to the ground. A hand with long claws attacks him. Jiang Xiao tries to shield himself with his hand, but the ghost grabs his neck. He looks like an old man with a hat on his head. The ghost lifts the main character into the air. You can see his crazy and scary face. A stream of glowing smoke comes out of Jiang Xiao's mouth. He notices that the ghost is sucking the life force out of him and injecting yin energy into him. The ghost opens its mouth wide, sucking in streams of energy. The main character bares his teeth in rage and says that he is not going to die here. He dangles his legs in the air, summoning his shadow. She throws out her dark claws and grabs the ghost by the legs. He opens his empty eye sockets in horror. Dark streams suddenly attack the monster. The main character notices that the shadow attacked the white misty ghost. Jiang Xiao manages to escape the creature's grip. The tenacious paws of the shadow clasp the ghost on all sides. He screams in horror, revealing his fangs. The main character watches in horror as his shadow overcomes the ghost. Jiang Xiao notices that the creature is about to turn into mist and slip away. He grabs the dagger and rushes at the ghost. The main character escapes through the smoke to the ghost. The dagger is seen stabbing into him, creating a large hole. The fog clears, revealing the figure of Jiang Xiao holding a weapon. The shadow's paws catch up with the main character. He lowers himself to the ground, and the shadow goes back into the ground. The main character turns in horror to the dark clumps and declares that the shadow scares him. A shadow falls on his eyes. He looks at what is happening in bewilderment. In place of the creature, only fog remains. The main character is looking for a pearl in bewilderment. He lowers his head and looks at the liquid-like shadow. He begins to trample her, demanding that the pearl be returned to him. The shadow rises, wavering and taking on various forms. The main character moves his scratched hand to the side. He looks down in horror. Jiang Xiao notices that his right hand looks like it is withered. He lifts it. Thick smoke forms nearby. The fog swirls into a huge whirlwind. The main character raises his eyebrows in amazement, realizing that he was not harmed and took the power of the ghost for himself. Only with the help of soul pearls embedded in spirit weapons can a spirit lord use the abilities of ghosts. The figure of a man with a sword in one hand and a pearl in the other emerges in the imagination. The main character widens his eyes in amazement, thinking that he can directly use the power of the spirit, without spiritual weapons or even pearls. Jiang Xiao lowers his head and opens his mouth. He says he's sure it has something to do with the shadow. The protagonist notices that the right arm can be restored to its original form when the skill wears off. However, the changes to the right arm after activating the skill are still a bit confusing, so it's worth wearing long sleeves just in case. Jiang Xiao grins, sweat forming on his cheek. He says he will be able to hide his presence and be unpredictable, which is perfect for his spiritual weapon. The main character proudly looks forward, holding his dagger with the help of fog. He says it's his turn to hunt. A crowd of scary ghosts is visible. A blue stripe quickly cuts through the fog. A dark landscape can be seen next to the cemetery. There is an hour left before the end of the test. The main character extends his hand with a flask in his fingers. He says that the White Mist Ghost's ability really improves the killing efficiency greatly, and the jade bottle is almost full. He looks around, his hair blowing in the wind. Jiang Zhao thinks about what special skill the green pearl gives. The main character moves away from the corpses of the slain ghosts and reports that until it is dawn, he must continue to hunt ghosts in the forest. The shadow behind him takes on a strange shape. It distorts into a scary monster while the main character calmly walks forward and thinks about how he wants to become stronger. The action moves to the Forest of Trials. 8. Sunlight can be seen through the trees. The forest is filled with a pleasant glow. People gather in a single group. Zhang Ba tilts his head with a pained expression on his face. He talks about how glad he is that morning has come, because he was very scared. The girls in the back are talking. Jai Hai walks into the crowd of people with a confident face. He talks about how pathetic everyone is and how strong he is, and also about how Jiang Zhao hasn't shown up yet. Jai Hai hands the flask with the spheres to Chen Fan and asks him to look at them. The man brings the bottle closer and sees that it is 80% full. He wishes further success. The crowd turns towards Bai Kaiming with surprised faces. The girl leads her squad with confident steps. The students discuss the girl's confident appearance and talk about how her parents are spirit lords. The girls watch Bai Kaiming with delight and talk about how jealous they are of her because she has 7 skill holes and how she will surely get the green pearl. Bai Kaiming hands his bottle to his mentor. He lifts her up and says with a jubilant look that she was able to kill as many as 10 wandering spirits on her first hunt, and that this is one of the best results. The girl boldly declares with a calm face that she needs a green pearl. The main character suddenly appears from behind a tree. He rests his hand on the trunk and holds the bottle, smiling. He says that it is unfair to give away first place when not everyone has returned from the forest yet. Chen Fan notices that he is in a good mood. The man looks at Jiang Zhao carefully. He regrets that Jiang Zhao has low qualifications. Bai Kaiming folds his arms and declares that this is a waste of time. The main character gives his bottle to Chen Fan and asks him to tell him how many ghosts he killed. He holds the flask in surprise and looks at the main character, declaring that such a person with a 3-star weapon asks to look at the number of ghosts. His face instantly changes to one of surprise. The man sees a violet aura coming from the flask. Bai Kaiming and Jai Hai watch in horror what is happening, not understanding how this is possible. Jai Hai accuses Jiang Zhao of cheating and says that he filled the bottle with ordinary water. The main character turns to these two and confidently says that their faces are funny. Chen Fan puts his hand down. A blue stream of energy is visible on it. It does not resonate with the energy hidden in the flask. Chen Fan says that the water of the jade bottle does not merge with other liquids. He declares Jiang Zhao the winner. 2 different liquids cannot merge together. Chen Fan hands the main character a green pearl in his hand and says that this is a reward. The crowd looks at Jiang Zhao in surprise and suspicion. Some say that he had always been quiet before, so they did not expect him to win. Bai Kaiming turns sharply to the main character and declares that she remembers him. The main character turns to her and with a calm face asks who she is. The girl blushes with anger. Chen Fan watches Jiang Zhao carefully and wonders if there was a problem when checking the number of souls with the stone. He wonders whether the main character really has 3 holes in his weapon, since such a case is unprecedented. The man spreads his hands and turns to Jiang Zhao, saying that it was not easy for him today, so he does not need to be limited by his qualifications. He reveals that in Tianji Palace there is also a master with 3 holes in the spirit weapon. He once suppressed many ghosts single-handedly. The main character looks at Chen Fan with interest and raises his eyebrows. Chen Fan closes his eyes and says that it's time to get ready to head back. The crowd greets Jiang Zhao. His comrade pats the character on the shoulder and asks how he did it. The main character says he can't explain it, but briefly says that it all depends on the people. Some people say he was just lucky. Chen Fan, with his mouth slightly open, looks at the main character. He reflects that he is a strong master, but with only 3 holes, and such a possibility may be 1 in a million. The action moves to the evening, to the pedestrian street of the Jialing River. The main character wanders down the street among the shopping row. He walks along a deserted street. Jiang Zhao notices in surprise that it is usually crowded here, with small shops and musicians open. The ghost of an old man appears behind him, making Jiang Zhao tremble. The ghost asks where the Senling furniture house is. The main character jumps to the side, turning around. He asks why the old man needed a furniture house. The man, looking pitiful, explains that his son works there, but he still hasn't returned home. His phone is switched off, and the old man is worried about him. Jiang Zhao smiles in confusion and says that the phone might just be dead. He advises him to return home. The main character's face changes abruptly and an expression of horror appears. A lonely lantern shines against the wall. The main character notices that the old man has no shadow. Jiang Zhao twitches tensely, his eyes widening. The ghost looks at him with empty eye sockets and asks what is happening. The main character furrows his eyebrows and turns his back to the ghost. He asks him not to leave, as he will find his son himself. The ghost asks Jiang Zhao not to run away. The main character quickly rushes to the city center. The old man extends his hand forward. A purple aura can be seen around him. He says another one ran away. The action moves to Jiang Zhao's house after some time. A row of multi-story buildings can be seen against the background of the night sky. The door closes with a slam. The main character leans his back against her and breathes nervously. He says he was able to escape and tells how a year ago the Senlang furniture store caught fire, and the entire staff was burned to death. But the store did not resume business. He suspects that the old man was a ghost. In suburban cities, you can tell at first glance that you are a wandering ghost, but the night ghosts that appear inside the city are difficult to distinguish from real people. The main character says that he is too weak. At this moment, he clenches his teeth and looks intensely over his shoulder. He clenches his hand into a fist and goes inside the house. Jiang Zhao states that he won't always be able to lead, so he must become stronger. The main character notices someone standing in the kitchen asking why Jiang Zhao came back so late. A beautiful dark-haired girl dressed in a shirt appears before him. She asks why he is surprised. The main character understands that this is the daughter of the adoptive parents of the previous owner of the body, Jiang Chan. He looks intensely at the girl, smiling stupidly, and says that he just came home. Jiang Chang leans towards him and asks him with a calm face if that instructor from Tianji Palace scared him. The main character turns sideways to her and walks towards the sofa. He states that he, like his sister, has awakened a spiritual weapon. Jiang Zhao watches Jiang Chang squeeze the cream out of the tube onto his hand. He thinks that it is necessary to reflect on the situation, since, apparently, they depend on each other. The girl begins to rub the cream on his legs, asking how many holes his spirit weapon has. The main character makes a pitiful face and admits that there are only 3. The girl stretches out her leg and says in surprise that Jiang Zhao should do something else, starting to list professions. The main character raises his eyebrows and looks at Jiang Chang, asking how many holes she has. The girl puts her hand to the side, grinning, and says that there are 12 of them in her weapon. The main character opens his mouth wide in surprise and asks why she is so gifted. Jiang Chang leaves with his back to Jiang Zhao, declaring that he will go to bed. She turns her head over her shoulder and warns him that he should think about how he will live from now on, and then warns him to go to bed early. The main character furrows his eyebrows pathetically and thinks about how such a girl needs sleep at all. The door to Jiang Chang's room slams shut. The main character goes to his place and sits on the bed. He looks at the green pearl and says that using it is a headache. It's worth absorbing it first and seeing what skills he can master. Jiang Zhao tosses the ball while holding a dagger. A shoot from the shadow suddenly appears. An inscription appears that the main character wants to allow the shadow to absorb the green pearl. The main character wearily leans his head against his hand. He turns his face to the shadow with displeasure and says that he is not going to let the shadow absorb her, since he himself lacks the skills. He holds the dagger with his hands, into which he inserts the pearl. The pearl begins to glow with a green sheen. A cluster of lightning suddenly forms around the dagger, illuminating the room. A sky resembling ether can be seen. There are several holes inside it, from which a blue glow emanates. The naked figure of the main character is noticeable. He grabs the dagger with a joyful face. Obtain green level soul pearl skill, flash of green light. A flash of bright light absorbs a third of spiritual power. Time limit is 1 minute. In the hand of the main character you can see the hilt of a dagger with a pearl inserted. Jiang Zhao happily raises his hand in front of him and says that this is a powerful enough skill that can cause serious damage to white level ghosts. The pearl flies up, blue stripes extend from it. The main character frowns in bewilderment and leans forward. It is located next to a huge pearl, from which blue rays extend to the side. The main character opens his mouth and furrows his eyebrows, watching in bewilderment as an expanded branch of the soul pearl appears in his weapon. New holes light up next to the pearl. Several pearls of different colors are visible. The effect of the soul pearl skill increases by 40% strength and 30% range. Black soul skill effect strikes the enemy and prevents them from using their abilities for 3 seconds. White mist ghost soul pearl skill effect halves the buffer time and spiritual power required for this ability and doubles the speed at which they are released. The main character looks at the pearls in surprise. He says that the flash of green light opened up these 3 skills, with each direction being useful and comparable to the red level soul pearl skills. The main character stands on the surface, blue rays emanate from him. He reasons that obtaining a red level pearl is difficult, and the success rate of absorption is only 50%. His spirit weapon, after absorbing 1 green level pearl, can produce mutations no less than a red level soul pearl. The main character spreads his legs wide and notices the glow of one of the pearls. Each skill can generate more branches. As long as there are enough soul pearls, an incomparably huge skill tree can be created. Jiang Xiao stands in front of the blue flash. He thinks that if he really develops like this, then it is possible that a flash of green light will tear apart the heavens in the future. The main character looks around him in amazement. The action moves to school the next day. You can see the tree in the yard and the main building. Bai Kaiming walks into Jiang Xiao's class and everyone looks at her in surprise. People begin to flock to her. The main character turns his head. The girl proudly props up her side with her hand. People look at her in surprise, not believing their eyes. Bai Kaiming frowns and looks around as he begins to bargain with Jiang Xiao. She offers 30,000 for the green pearl. The guy holds a stick in his hands and eats. He brings the chopstick to the food, piercing it. Jiang Xiao with a happy face says that there is no pearl, but he can offer fried donuts. He shows her the donut and smiles, offering it for 30,000. The girl comes close to his desk and watches the guy finish his meal. Bai Kaiming looks at him sternly with purple eyes. She tells him not to pretend. Jai Hai places his foot on the protagonist's desk. He sits on the desk in front and says to be more prudent, because the pearl of the soul will not help such a mediocrity. Jai Hai also says that Jiang Xiao should rejoice at the opportunity to bargain with Bai Kaiming. The main character rests his chin on his hand and smiles. He ironically remarks that Jai Hai should learn how to pour water into a jade bottle like him. Jiang Xiao offers to buy him another soul pearl for the girl. Jai Hai kicks the desk with an angry face and says that he has become arrogant. He adds that Tianji Palace will not accept him and that this is all a waste of energy. The main character looks ahead of him with mockery. Bai Kaiming stands nearby. Jiang Xiao tells Jai Hai not to get too carried away, since his lover hasn't even responded yet. He tells the girl that the pearl was absorbed by him a long time ago. Jai Hai is burning with anger. Bai Kaiming clenches his hands into fists and states that they still have a long way to go, so he asks Jiang Xiao not to be complacent. The main character, looking bored, raises his hand and says goodbye to the girl. He looks up information about the pearl on the internet and says that Bai Kaiming tried to buy it cheap, since the real price is 50,000. He looks at his phone thoughtfully and smiles, wondering if Bai Kaiming is mocking him. The teacher knocks on the door. She asks for silence. She then says that the results of the admission to Tianji Palace have been summed up and that she wants to announce the list of names. The woman waves her hand to seat the students. The class looks back at the teacher who has entered in surprise. Jai Hai looks back at Jiang Xiao and mocks him. He is sure that the main character will not pass. The teacher stands right in front of the class and reads the names. She calls Lai Ranran, the red-haired guy, and he clenches his fist happily. The main character looks ahead tensely, thinking that Tianji Palace values bravery most of all. Regardless of the qualifications of those who passed, they all encountered ghosts in the northern suburbs. The teacher holds the piece of paper in front of her and announces the name of the last one accepted, Jai Hai. The guy with dark brown hair turns and waves his hand at Jiang Xiao, mocking him. The teacher notices the main character's name on the lists. She raises her eyebrows in surprise and says that there is a special pass. She calls Jiang Xiao, and the main character opens his mouth in surprise. He looks ahead with hope in his eyes. He thinks about what a special pass means, and thinks that the reason is special success on the test. The class jumps up from their desks and shouts in displeasure that this is unfair. They say that even the great Bai Kaiming has no special status. The students turn and discuss the news among themselves. Some say that a special pass to Tianji Palace gives access to resources far beyond the capabilities of others. Almost every special clearance student is a talented spirit master with incredible qualifications. Everyone is surprised what Jiang Xiao with 3 holes is doing among them. Jai Hai's eyes widen in surprise. He rests his hands on the desk with displeasure and shouts that there are less than 5 special people in all of Yucheng. The teacher glares at him with displeasure. She asks if Jai Hai doubts Tianji Palace's decision. He lowers his face, frowning angrily, and says that's not what he meant. One girl in the class gets up from her desk and smiles. The teacher tells the named students to go home and pack their things, and the spirit master will pick them up in the afternoon. The main character rises from his desk. He passes by Jai Hai and smiles. He taunts his opponent and says he will go first. Jai Hai bares his teeth in rage. The main character puts his hands in his pockets and leaves the classroom with a satisfied smile. He tells Jai Hai not to be angry as he will have many more opportunities to make a fool of himself. The students look out the window and talk about whether the main character has always been so impudent. Some say they would behave the same way. Huge multi-story buildings are visible. The main character comes home and says goodbye to his sister. He is already talking about her calling him via video call when a skirt flies into his face. Jiang Jiao removes his clothes from his face and looks ahead in surprise. He ironically says that he is not going to go abroad. The girl stands bent over in front of the suitcase and says not to flatter yourself. She frowns and asks with a serious face if she can get into Tianji Palace with her qualifications. The main character raises his eyebrows in surprise. Jiang Chang holds out the Tianji Palace badge and smiles, saying that she is a special student. Jiang Jiao reaches out to her and asks if she is a special student like him. The girl says that she is very gifted. She turns her head towards the photo frame. Jiang Chang assumes that she was taken because of their parents' reputation. This morning, Chen Fan told her that her parents were once members of the Dawn Group. They sacrificed themselves to save tens of millions of people when they sealed away a large ghost. The photo shows Jiang Xiao's family, his sister and parents, whose faces are hidden. The main character frowns. He puts his hands on his hips and asks what the Spirit Lord organization is all about. Jiang Chang raises his eyebrows in surprise and says that this is a group consisting of the best spiritual masters. She picks up the phone and explains, using the game as an example, that different spirit lords have different skill areas and areas of development, and usually each specializes in a certain aspect. Various images appear, among them, a huge man with animal-like armlets with claws, an elf with a bow and arrow in her hands, a girl with white hair and coral in her head. The girl says that, like different roles in a game, when combined, an unexpected chemical effect occurs. The Spirit Lord organization is a group of people with diverse talents. The main character raises his eyebrows and asks with interest what his sister's area of expertise is. She clenches her hands into fists in front of her and says that she positions herself as a master of ranged combat, and in the future her development will also take this direction. The main character raises his hand to his face and says that in the future he needs to find a group of reliable teammates. The girl waves it off and says that it only has 3 holes, so no one will want to take it. Jiang Jiao smiles slyly and internally rejoices. Thanks to the cheat, he alone is equivalent to the whole team. Several images of the main character emerge with a dagger in his hands. A pink suitcase can be seen standing upright. The action moves to the station where the bus is parked. A voice warns that this is a bus for the gifted. A crowd of students is discussing their imminent departure. Some guy is watching Jiang Chang from the window, and Jiang Xiao is dragging suitcases behind him. The guys around are discussing the beauty of the girl who stands gloomily in the middle. Jiang Xiao touches the red-haired guy's shoulders. He grabs the 2 guys from behind and asks what they're talking about. The main character warns that this girl has a weapon with 12 holes. Jiang Chang puts his hands on his hips and gets angry at Jiang Xiao. She says she has been waiting for him forever. He justifies himself by saying that he just met 2 acquaintances. A good-natured man with glasses appears from behind the bus. He says that if your things are packed, then you need to get on the bus, since they will leave in 10 minutes. Half an hour later, the bus speeds along the road to the palace. The main character sits with his sister and looks out the window. He muses that they weren't told how long they would be traveling and that he's bored. A girl leans across the seats and addresses Jiang Xiao. She asks what his name is. His face turns red and shines with happiness. He introduces himself and starts a nice conversation. The girl offers to chat, since the drive is still long, and says that her name is Zook Xuan. The blonde says that her parents are members of the Blue Knight group. The main character, with blush on her cheeks, shyly and joyfully asks to tell stories about her father. Jiang Chang ironically asks if he really knows her father. She folds her arms and asks Zook Xuan to list her father's skills. The main character, embarrassed, asks not to say such things. He smiles awkwardly and furrows his eyebrows, saying that his father often mentioned the Blue Knight group and especially noted the strength of Zook Xuan's father. At this moment the bus moves towards the tunnel. Zook Xuan says with joy on her face that many people know about her dad. The protagonist grabs the girl's hand and enthusiastically says that he grew up with ambitions to become a spirit lord like their parents. He regrets that he and Zook Xuan met so late, because they could be assigned to different classes. The girl gently shakes his hand and says with a smile that she will give him contact information so that he can ask her anything. Jiang Chang furrows his eyebrows mockingly and grins. She notices how Jiang Xiao does everything to start a conversation with Zhu Xuan. The girl pulls the main character's cheeks and says that he never knew about any spirit lords. Jiang Xiao looks out the window and says in surprise that there is something strange. He asks if there is such a long tunnel to Yucheng since they have been driving for 30 minutes. Zhu Xuan looks at the phone and says in surprise that the connection has disappeared. The main character frowns and says that he has to see what's going on. Zhu Xuan looks at him tensely. Jiang Xiao approaches the bespectacled driver and asks why the tunnel is so long. The driver says this is unusual as this tunnel is usually very short. They look out the windshield and see complete darkness all around. The driver notices that there is no exit visible. The main character points his finger forward and asks why the other two cars are not visible. The man trembles nervously and exhales heavily, saying that the cars seem to have disappeared. The main character frowns thoughtfully. He thinks they probably encountered ghosts. Students on the bus look around intently and wonder if the driver is on the wrong road. Some people feel that the temperature is getting lower. Jiang Xiao screams, furrowing his brows, and asks him to stop the bus. The driver slams on the brakes. People on the bus jump out of their seats in outrage. Some call upon spiritual weapons. Jiang Chang also summons a weapon. It is an orange fan. The main character looks around the bus and thinks that there is definitely a ghost in the endless tunnel. He wonders if he should go down and take a look. The students look around in fear. The red-haired guy persuades everyone not to panic, because they are special disciples of Tianji Palace, so they should not act rashly. The palace must definitely send people to help. One of the girls sitting on the bus confirms his words. She says that their parents are talented spiritual masters. Another man claims that they must become the next generation of masters and the palace will not allow them to die. They turn to each other and talk, calming down. The main character takes a step and sees a shadow beneath him. He frowns and opens his mouth slightly. An inscription appears that the dark tunnel is full of unknown horrors, and it was at this moment that Jiang Xiao decided to leave the car. The main character stands in the dark with bated breath. He looks forward with horror and reflects on the correctness of those who spoke about the Tianji Palace. But the shadow wouldn't just let him go. The main character asks the driver to open the door, demandingly raising his hand. The students around begin to riot and shout at Jiang Xiao. The main character turns to them and with an innocent look answers that he just wants to go to the toilet. Jiang Chang says that she would also like to go out, while thinking that something is wrong. She smiles slightly and raises her eyebrows. The students open their mouths in displeasure and frown. They ask not to put them in danger. The main character and his sister take steps into the darkness. Jiang Xiao turns around and sees one of the students calling them dead. Jiang Chang looks displeased and asks his brother what is going on. He looks to the side with a reasonable look and says that they are faced with a paranormal incident. A bus is visible standing in the middle of a dark tunnel. The main character asks if Jiang Chang finds all this strange. The girl raises her eyebrows in disappointment and asks if he really called her out because of this. She says that her brother may be risking his life in vain. He glares at her and says that as spirit lords, they can't just sit and wait for death. The main character offers his sister a choice: sit on the bus or explore the tunnel. Jiang Xiao turns on the flashlight on his phone. Jiang Chang agrees to explore the tunnel with him and says that there is nothing to be seen here. The main character assumes that someone from the Tianji Palace is watching them. A girl and a guy look in different directions of the tunnel. They notice a piece of paper floating. Jiang Chang moves closer to Jiang Xiao. The main character looks into his palm at the caught piece of paper. It turns out to be paper money. They see more and more pieces of paper falling ahead. Zhu Xuan looks out the window with a nervous look and says that the light of the characters' phones is very far from the bus. People on the bus make contemptuous remarks about the characters, hoping for help. A grate appears on the ceiling, shrouded in a blue glow. This is an unknown hidden room. The screen shows a broadcast from the bus. People in bathrobes watch what is happening with disappointment. A man with a scar on his cheek looks at the screen and says that future spirit lords are just sitting on a bus, waiting for someone to save them. He says that in their place it was necessary to show the ghosts that they are worth fearing. The man with the mustache looks at Jiang Xiao and Jiang Chang and says that his colleague is too critical since they are still children. The man with the scar looks up and asks the names of the characters. A brother and sister appear on the screen with a concerned look. One of the employees notices that these are Jiang Chang's children. A man in a robe turns to a colleague with a question about whether Jiang Chang was number 2 of the Dawn group. He says that his children have not disgraced their father's name and that he wants to see them in the palace. A colleague explains to him that Jiang Xiao has only 3 holes in her weapon, but her own daughter has 12 holes. At this moment, a small squad of brother and sister advances through the tunnel. The man with the scar frowns in surprise and asks about his adopted son. He orders one of the employees to monitor the situation in the tunnel, looking over his shoulder. He also says to send one white Miss Ghost as he wants to see Jiang Chang in action. His colleague with a mustache looks at the man in bewilderment. He says that these children are just preparing to become spirit lords. The man in the robe throws his hand up and says that he has everything under control. Clouds of fog appear in the tunnel. Jiang Zhao and Jiang Chang hold hands and talk about lowering the temperature. They see the entire tunnel become covered in fog. The main character opens his mouth slightly. His face is not visible. He says that he knows this feeling. The girl grabs his hand. He shields her with himself and says that there is a white foggy ghost nearby. The girl frowns and asks in bewilderment why the people of Tianji Palace would release a ghost. The characters stand back to back and are shielded by weapons. The main character says that it is important to focus on the monster since it usually attacks in the back, and asks to report something suspicious. A blue mist appears around the characters. Jiang Zhao's eye sparkles. He reasons that the cooldown for the green light flash is 1 minute, and that if he wants to hit the ghost harder, he can't miss. With his current skills, he could kill him. There is a sound in the tunnel. Jiang Zhao frowns and tenses her face, telling Jiang Chang to be careful. The girl begins to step back and touches the main character with her elbow. He turns around in horror, looking carefully ahead. Jiang Chang looks ahead in fear. The fan falls to the ground, where smoke spreads. A ghost's head with stripes instead of eyes bursts through the fog. The fog lifts Jiang Chang into the air. Jiang Zhao frowns and watches in horror as the ghost attacks the girl. The main character raises a sword covered with a blue aura. He jumps up and raises his hand to strike. Jiang Zhao blasts the ghost with a flash of green light. The ghost pulls away in horror, screaming ferociously. Jiang Chang frowns painfully and collapses, the fog next to her dissipating. The main character holds the girl, holding a dagger in his other hand. Jiang Chang furrows his eyebrows in displeasure and notices that the white fog is thickening again. Jiang Zhao turns sideways towards her, his right hand taking on a withered appearance. He asks her not to worry, as for now the misty ghost will not be able to take their lives. A camera can be seen on the wall of the tunnel. The red lens shines in the dark. A man in a bathrobe stands in front of the screens, watching teenagers. He notices that the area of fog has become wider, and this worries him, since one ghost is not capable of such a thing. He indignantly asks his colleagues if they have released another ghost. The man with the scar holds the phone to his ear. His interlocutor replies that the second ghost has not been seen. He then asks how the exaggerated nebula can be explained. He puts his finger on the button and ends the call. The man lowers his hand with the phone, imagining himself in a tunnel. He says that the descendants of great people are gathered in this place, and in this case it would be safer to go and see them in person. He asks not to create problems for him. A thick wall of fog rolls steadily through the tunnel. He keeps getting closer to the characters, who are retreating to the wall. The main character steps forward and says that he will deal with the ghost. Jiang Chang looks at him worriedly and asks him to be careful. Jiang Zhao looks at her decisively, smiling, and says that he will not allow anything to happen. The girl looks at the main character with tears in her eyes. He raises his hand with the dagger back, cutting through the fog. He thinks that the fog expands his range of perception, and once it touches him, he will not be able to escape. The fog forms a hole in the middle and a voice is heard screaming "Gotcha!" The main character breaks through the fog. He hits the ghost from behind. His eyes widen in surprise, thinking about how it feels like cutting metal. There is a cut on the ghost, like on metal. The main character reasons that the only way to somehow injure this creature is to use a skill. Jiang Zhao frowns, furrows forming between his eyebrows. He realizes that there is another option. The ghost bares his fangs and sticks out his long tongue. He lands in the middle of the fog. Smoke swirls around the protagonist's dagger. Jiang Zhao takes an angle and attacks the monster from behind. He reasons that it is necessary to aim for the wound left by the flash of green light. Jiang Zhao's eyes light up blue and lightning flashes from them. A stripe of light is visible cutting the air. The monster is cut in half, splashes fly from it. The main character stands in a pathos pose. A blue sphere remains in the air. Jiang Zhao reaches out to her and takes her away, reasoning that the ghost soul pearl required more energy this time. He is happy that this time he killed the white level ghost himself. The main character frowns, looking ahead thoughtfully. He thinks about how he can use the soul pearl to break through the advanced green light flash skills again. For an ever-changing battlefield, the green light flash's 1 minute cooldown is still too long. Jiang Chang hurries to the main character with a worried look. She asks if everything is okay, and the protagonist replies that the ghost was careless and allowed him to carry out the attack. Jiang Jiao suddenly turns his gaze to the side. His face noticeably darkens. The girl behind him looks in surprise. Jiang Jiao warns the girl to be careful as there is something else in the fog. A shadow appears through the curtain of smoke. A voice says that the characters quickly killed the mist ghost. A man with a scar on his face emerges through the fog. He says that there must be another ghost in the tunnel and also asks not to be afraid, introducing himself as Jian Yu from Tianji Palace. The main character touches Jiang Chang's hand and hands her the pearl. The guy raises his eyebrows and with a joyful face says that his sister killed the ghost. The girl looks at her brother in bewilderment. Jian Yu happily looks at Jiang Chang and praises her. He asks the characters to get back on the bus and be safe while he sees them off. Jiang Chang smiles guiltily. Jiang Ziao breaks into a wide smile. They walk off hand in hand to the bus. The man presses his hand to his chin and reflects that Jiang Chang is a worthy, talented and strong fighter, and the main character is lucky to have her. The action is postponed after some time. The ceiling of the tunnel is visible. Then part of the bus appears. The students stand in an organized group in front of the bus, facing Jian Yu. He tilts his head and frowns disapprovingly. The man asks what the disciples are going to do in the future if a supernatural event suddenly occurs, since they, the future spirit lords, could not save themselves on their own now. The students hang their heads in shame and guilt. Jian Yu warns that they are still special students, as their parents were legendary spirit lords who made great sacrifices for humanity. The driver takes off his yellow glasses. He stands in a pathetic pose and boldly declares that he, too, was an observer and saw the reaction of the students from the very beginning. He calls their behavior a disappointment. Jian Yu smiles and moves his hand to the side, pointing at the main characters. He says that Jiang Jiao and Jiang Chang were very brave, especially the girl who was able to destroy a white-level ghost on her own at a young age. The man, with warmth and joy in his eyes, says that he will look after her and that she should continue to do so. Jiang Chang smiles sweetly while holding his fan. You can see the ceiling of the tunnel with lit LEDs. Jian Yu says that we must continue on our way. The main character looks at the dissatisfied Jiang Chang with a joyful face and asks if she was scared. She brings the pearl to him in surprise and asks why he gave it away, and pretended that Jiang Chang defeated the ghost. He takes the pearl from the girl's hands and says that she is his younger sister and has a powerful 12-hole spiritual weapon. The girl puts the pearl in his hand and asks him to take it. The main character refuses, saying that this is resource maximization. The bus rushes along the highway. The main character turns away and looks out the window, suggesting that if people knew the truth, then nothing would await him except empty praise. However, if Jiang Chang were in his place, she would be ranked higher when the time came to split into classes. The girl turns away with a proud face and says that she doesn't care. The main character finds a white pearl in his hand. He looks at her with a joyful smile and thinks about what skill the second white Miss Ghost Soul Pearl will unlock. A dazzling shine suddenly appears from the pearls. The main character is transported to blue space. He realizes that the flash of green light has taken a step forward thanks to this pearl. Jiang Jiao leans towards the rising blue pillars of radiance. Lightning rushes upward towards the blue dome. The main character closes the circle, and he sees before him a new branch of skill development. He is surrounded by a blue glow. His hair develops from air currents. He understands that 3 more development branches have been added. He swings his dagger. A green skill hole appears, which requires the soul pearl of the afterlife ghost. The afterlife flash is activated, which allows you to freely control the movement of the green flash, increasing its speed 3-fold. A black skill hole also appears, which requires a water ghost soul pearl, activating the reflective flash skill, which allows you to add a layer of marks when attacking, the number of which affects the detonation damage after the flash. At the same time, in the background, the main character snaps his fingers and an explosion occurs. Then a white skill hole appears that requires a hang ghost soul pearl, a skill affecting curse flash that creates 3 curse flashes. The main character is seen in a purple halo above a crowd of ghosts. You can see a whole tree of skills with different branches. The protagonist reasons that no matter which way he progresses, the flash of green light can develop into a skill no less powerful than a red-level soul pearl. Jiang Jiao holds his chin with his hand. He thinks that from the afterlife, only demonic ghosts remain. Although water ghosts are green-level ghosts, they are very rare and only appear in places with a lot of rivers. Hang ghosts are completely red-level. The main character raises his eyebrows in horror and asks where he can find such people. Jiang Chang turns to him and asks what happened. People on the bus jump up from their seats and admire the scenery. They are located in the city of Skynet. A large amount of knowledge can be seen against the backdrop of the natural landscape. The students leave the bus and line up in the square. Students look at everything around them with delight. The protagonist is surprised that the state has created a branch of the Tianji Palace deep in the mountains. Someone notices that there are caves in the mountain. The main character throws his hands up and says with delight that, compared to the city, the air here is very clean. Some guys look at Jiang Zhao with envy and tell him to be grateful to his sister. Clouds float peacefully across the sky. The action moves to the central square. You can see the mountain range behind the modern building. A voice reports the presence of all students at the meeting. The main character looks over his shoulder at the people around him and reasons that there are about 500 people here, who may all be recruited from southern China. Jai Hai and Bai Kaiming look at Jiang Zhao in anger. Teachers' hands can be seen. Everyone is dressed in business uniform. A large group of teachers line up. Jiang Chang finds himself among other students. She is described as a very talented student. The main character frowns jealously and nervously, making a face. He tells everyone around him not to look at his sister. Jiang Zhao looks behind him and Jiang Chang comes up to him and says that he feels awkward. The main character calms her down with a smile on his face, stating that people around just want to know who she is because she is special. The girl turns around and raises her eyebrows, saying that she feels like she's just a commodity for them. She begins to say that it was her brother who killed the white ghost. The main character interrupts her by placing his hand on his head. He looks at her confidently. The girl lowers her head guiltily. The main character loudly says that she killed the ghost, but is simply shy. Jian Yu watches the characters with a frown. He says that the brother and sister should be separated so that Jiang Zhao does not hide behind his sister's skirt. His mustachioed colleague turns his gaze to him, ironically noticing that the man does not take his eyes off the girl. The man with the scar states that he chose Jiang Chang for himself. His colleague attacks him with reproaches, their faces not far from each other. The mustachioed man declares that he will not allow Jian Yu to order him around. Someone calls the man with the scar. He turns around and sees a woman with pink hair falling to one side. She says that Wang He is an auxiliary spirit lord who has no more than 2 attack skills, but he is not ashamed of it. The man frowns, a shadow falling over his eyes. He states that he chose Jiang Chang before she even entered the city. The woman raises her hand, pointing her finger at Jian Yu. She states what Jiang Chang chose when she was still studying and just awakening the spiritual weapon. The man gets into an argument with her that he noticed the girl even earlier. The students talk to each other in bewilderment, discussing the conflict between teachers. Jian Yu throws his hand out to the side and activates his spirit weapon. The pink-haired teacher also summons her weapon. She shouts that she wants to see his hellfire blade in battle. A stick drops sharply between them, throwing out sparks. The teachers freeze a second before the battle. An old man with long gray hair orders them to stop, since games at the gates of the Tianji Palace are prohibited. The man closes one eye, frowning. The woman clenches her teeth, her pupils constrict. An old man with gray hair looks intently at the girl. He thinks this child is truly gifted. The man raises his hand behind his back, standing directly in front of the main characters. The main character, in bewilderment, asks who this old man is and why he is looking at him, as he is worried that his distinctiveness has been revealed. An old man with a stern face glances at the students while the teachers behind them are still arguing. The man says that every class is interested in Jiang Chang, so she must choose her own path. The main character frowns and opens his mouth slightly, exhaling in relief due to the fact that he was not opened. A woman with pink hair runs up to the girl and greets her joyfully. She says that her name is Chen Yan and that she is the leader of class as she admits that she was following her in Yucheng. Chen Yan smiles sweetly and beckons, saying that Jiang Chang will become a legendary lord of at least level 5. Jiang Chang smiles and thanks for the invitation. A mustachioed colleague grins and tells an angry teacher that she talks a lot and lies. He calls himself Class B's leader, Lao Wang. He offers Jiang Chang 3 green level pearls and says that she will reach the 3rd level. Other teachers throw up their hands decisively and offer different prices, raising the bids like at an auction. The main character smiles ironically, imagining himself with a hammer, and waits for someone to raise the bet. Jian Yu gets angry and bares his teeth, calling the other teachers old sixes. With a crazy face, he raises one finger, declaring that he will give the girl 1 pearl of the hanged man. Lao Wang looks at his colleague in surprise and says that he is crazy because he is giving away the ghost pearl, which ranks 7th among the red level soul pearls. Chen Yan frowns and advises Jian Yu to think twice before acting, since he has been at level 3 for several years now and the pearl is his only chance to break through. The main character bows his head and thoughtfully reasons that the soul pearl of the hanged ghost has the fetter skill. Once released, a field will be created around the master, and the gravity of the enemy inside it will be increased several times. This one pearl would be enough to kill some assorted worms. The main character turns his gaze to his sister. He thinks that the third branch of Green Light Flash can create a new skill 3 Cursed Flashes, but for this it needs the hanged ghost pearl. However, Jiang Xiao cannot interfere with Jiang Chang's decision. The girl turns her head towards him. The main character advises her to decide for herself. Jiang Chang leans forward and looks straight, asking if she can ask her a question. She joins hands with her brother in front of the man. The girl with a determined look declares that she would like to study with her older brother. Jian Yu becomes upset, thinking that Jiang Xiao is hiding behind his sister again. The man wanted, on the contrary, to get rid of the main character. Jiang Chang lowers his eyelids in frustration. She turns her head to Chen Yan, who is beaming with joy. Jian Yu watches in horror as the girl speaks to his personal enemy, and says that he will not let her join class. Jian Yu tries to convince himself to take Jiang Xiao, but he doesn't want to bother with him. Jian Yu's point of view is shown. Jiang Chang is shown as a sweet girl, and in the back is the stupid Jiang Xiao. The man concludes that the main character is a 1% addition to Jiang Chang, whom he wants to accept as his disciple. He leans forward sharply and shouts that he will take them both. The main character throws his head back and smiles. He thanks the teacher and says that his sister's fame helped him. Jian Yu frowns and grits his teeth in anger as he looks at the characters. The action moves to the training ground. The ceiling of the building is visible. A group of students stands in an orderly manner in front of the teacher. He suggests talking about ghosts in the first lesson. All the students are wearing t-shirts and pants, and Jian Yu stands in front of them. He says that many of those present have had contact with ghosts, and that none of them will forget the fear that was experienced during the first meeting. He admits that he was once the same. Jian Yu says that spirit lords need to be brave, using Jiang Chang as an example. A girl in a pink t-shirt is visible. She raises her eyebrows and opens her mouth, declaring that all this happened thanks to her brother. Jian Yu raises one eyebrow, puzzled. He thinks, why is she talking about Jiang Xiao again, that he is disturbing her, and that he needs to show her the difference between her and her brother. The man says that he wants to talk about the knowledge that they must have in order to become masters of the spirits. The power of spirit lords comes from the soul pearl, and the same skill has a huge gap in the hands of different masters. A picture appears in his imagination where 2 students of level 1 and level 3 control the flow of blue energy in different ways. Jian Yu raises his head and says that he will choose a student to demonstrate. He asks Jiang Xiao to come forward. The main character stands right in front of the teacher, who asks what skill the green pearl given to Chen Fan gave him. The main character answers with a flash of green light. The man extends his hand to the side, summoning a spiritual weapon. He says that he also has this skill, mentally wanting to show the difference between them. Jian Yu pulls out a sword surrounded by a black aura and asks students to note that it takes at least a minute for beginners to use the skill. The main character raises his hand to his face and with an innocent face declares that he only needs 30 seconds to restore the skill. Jian Yu looks ahead in bewilderment, his jaw dropping. He doesn't understand how this is possible if he has the same cooldown at the 3rd level, and the main character has no level at all. Jiang Xiao asks with a sly grin if his flash of green light is unique. The man raises his hand behind his head and tells the main character to continue studying. He internally wonders if Jiang Xiao wants a man to recognize him as a 3-hole genius. Jian Yu clears his throat, bringing his hand to his mouth, and continues speaking. He says that as masters of the spirits, they must focus not only on the pearls, but also on themselves. He orders them to split into pairs and begin practical exercises. The light of lamps can be seen descending from the ceiling. Some guy hits a girl in the arm. The teacher tells him to move faster. The girl with the tail throws her partner. The teacher says that for low-ranking masters like them, close combat is the best way of defense besides skills. The girl tries to touch the main character, who joyfully jumps to the side. Jian Yu gets angry at him and tells him not to mess around. He asks Jiang Chang to demonstrate to others. The girl hits her partner in the cheek. She deftly spins in the air, then raises her leg, and then punches. Jian Yu notices her strength, speed, composure, and is proud of her. He watches the student with delight in his eyes, as do those around him. The main character brings water to his sister and praises her. The man clenches his teeth jealously and looks at Jiang Xiao with displeasure. He shouts sharply, placing his hands on his side, and tells Jiang Xiao and Yang Guang to demonstrate the fight. He says that fighting Yang Guang is stressful, but masters are not immune to real combat. A tall and strong guy flexes his fists in front of the main character. Jian Yu says that the weak have no right to be in the palace. The main character stretches his shoulders and grins. He warns that if something goes wrong, you shouldn't blame him. Jian Yu grins and looks away, ironically noting that the blessing of Instructor Wang He in the next class can save Jiang Xiao in case of danger. An inscription appears in front of the main character. She asks if he will show this person true strength, because he acquired the ability to disintegrate the last time he absorbed the pearl. The main character stands thoughtfully. His eyes are not visible. Jiang Xiao frowns confidently and smiles. A large guy quickly rushes towards the main character. If Yang Guang's full blow managed to hit the opponent's vital organs, he would lose the ability to move. Yang Guang swings to strike right in front of Jiang Xiao. He thinks about spraying. The main character's eyes light up with a blue sparkle. The enemy clenches his teeth and moves back slightly. With a powerful leap, Jiang Xiao ends up behind Yang Guang. He sees 3 different weak points on the large body. Yang Guang's eyes widen sharply. He turns around and sees his opponent rushing towards him. The main character grabs his head. He is surrounded by symbols. The voice tells him about the inner desire to kill and convinces him to kill his opponent. Jiang Xiao fights negative thoughts with all his might, gritting his teeth. His eyes snap open, veins popping out. The main character delivers a powerful blow, illuminated by a blue flash. Jian Yu tensely clenches his teeth and looks at the fight in surprise. The main character's eyes glow with a blue light. He does not give in to the voice's persuasion. The opponent leans back slightly after the blow. The protagonist's fist passes next to Yang Guang's lifeless face. The blow misses and breaks through the wall. The crowd looks on in horror at what happened. Many shout that the main character deceived them and that such a hit would kill a person. The main character is trembling and looking at his hand, not understanding how this happened. The opponent lies with his head on the ground. A dark shadow appears in front of Jiang Xiao, and he reasons that he has a real desire to kill his opponent. He looks ahead in fear. His sister grabs his hands and asks if he is okay. The girl looks worriedly at the guy, who smiles pitifully. He tries to act confident and says that he is fine and has won. Jiang Chang turns to the man with a serious face and asks how he likes Jiang Xiao's strength. Jian Yu looks ahead of him gloomily and thinks about how a man with 3 holes in a weapon could do such a thing. He wonders if he made a mistake. The man comes forward, observing the main characters. Jiang Chang states that the people around him don't understand Jiang Xiao's true strength, and that he doesn't need their approval. She looks at Jiang Xiao proudly and tells him to leave. The main character and his sister move away, passing through a crowd of students. A girl looks carefully to the side. She frowns seriously and smells something. This is Jai Yang from Tianji Palace, grade E, with 9 skill holes. The action moves to the city of Skynet, the animing housing complex, to rented apartments for students of the Tianji Palace. Huge high-rise buildings can be seen against the background of the night sky. Someone asks if the man made a mistake. The main character stands in front of a man with glasses and gray hair. They argue furiously that Jiang Xiao called 2 days ago and was informed that there were many rooms available. The man insists that the main character did not leave a deposit, so it is not his problem. Jiang Chang raises his fist threateningly behind Jiang Xiao and says that he assured her not to worry about rent, and now they have nowhere to live. The landlord raises his hand and leaves, announcing that there are no houses left near the Tianji Palace, so he can go to the suburbs to try his luck. A woman's hand with long nails appears behind the protagonist's back. The stranger grabs the characters by the shoulders and says that she has an apartment that she subleases. She praises it for its low price and cleanliness. Jiang Chang turns around and steps back, asking who she is. A girl with curly hair puts out her hand and says that she is a student living in apartment 1701. She paid rent for the apartment for 3 years, but now she is forced to leave, so the apartment will be empty. The main character begins to clarify details about the price, and the owner of the apartments turns around at this moment. The girl smiles and says to look at the apartment first. The owner smiles gloomily and thinks that apartment 1701 will change tenants again. The apartment number is visible next to the door. The girl opens the door for the characters and asks to take a look. The main character and Jiang Chang walk into the kitchen. Jiang Chang praises the size and cleanliness. The girl extends her hand and asks to look around. Jiang Xiao puts 2 fingers to his face and reasons that the furniture looks like no one has ever used it and that the apartment is too clean. The main character smiles, closing his eyes, and tells his sister that there are too many rooms for them. The girl suddenly raises her hand and declares that she will give a 50% discount. She pulls Jiang Xiao by the shoulders with a crazy face and offers a discount. He smiles happily. The girl points her finger on the paper where to leave the signature. The main character transfers money via mobile phone. The girl nervously looks to the side and announces the deal is completed. She says that the payment is once every 3 months and gives the keys. The main character catches them. The girl slips out the door and waves goodbye. Jiang Chang points to the door and says that she has a strange feeling that this girl got rid of the problem and ran away. The guy with a confident smile on his face says that the hostess mentioned that she was in a hurry. He advises her not to think about what happened and to be happy for renting such a good house. Jiang Chang turns his back to him and takes a step deeper into the apartment. She agrees and says she is tired and is going to bed. The main character frowns. His facial expression changes to serious. He says that the girl's behavior and the atmosphere in the room are suspicious. He wants to solve the problem before Jiang Chang notices. The guy folds his hands and sits on a chair. He decides to stay up all night and keep watching the monsters. The drop falls into the water with a loud splash. The main character instantly takes off, tense. He raises his head from the pillow and wonders where the sound came from, because the water was shut off tightly after taking a bath. Jiang Zhao wonders when he fell asleep and who covered him. The figure of an unknown man with long hair appears in the middle of the living room. The main character looks in horror at the grinning man. He opens his mouth wide out of fear. He grabs the first thing on the table. The main character thinks it is Jiang Chang, a man with long hair standing motionless. A dark grin is visible on his face. He turns around a laughing face with black eye sockets and red pupils. The creature says that it is indeed Jiang Chang. The main character frowns and bares his teeth, denying this. The creature turns to the main character, shining with its red eyes. The main character puts his hand to the switch. With the other hand he creates a weapon. He thinks that the low rent is not surprising and that the apartment is full of ghosts. He decides to directly use spray and a flash of green light to resolve this. The ghost lowers his face. His eyes are not visible. He angrily declares that this is his home. The ghost girl extends her hand forward, trembling, and kicks the main character out. He doesn't understand why the creature stopped and assumes it isn't hostile. The ghost raises its head, revealing a crooked mouth with protruding fangs. A shadow appears under the protagonist's feet. Jiang Zhao flips the switch and the light comes on. The ghost disappears into a light haze, and his own shadow goes away. The guy tilts his head and frowns, wondering if the ghost was afraid of the shadow or didn't intend to attack in the first place. The action moves to the Tianji Palace campus. You can see a beautiful modern building among the trees. Then a corridor with many doors is shown. Jiang Chang's voice says that there is a ghost in this house and that she is scared. In her memories, a picture emerges of how she stood on the other side of the door and heard the knocking of a ghost similar to the main character. The girl frowns, raising her frightened face, and says that yesterday the ghost pretended to be her brother and wandered around her door, and she almost fell for this deception. The guy sits at his desk with one hand behind his head and says that the same thing happened to him and that the house is really abnormal. Jiang Chang suggests leaving the apartment. The main character puts his hands on his chin and thoughtfully says that this ghost has no intention of harming them. He just wanted to drive them away. Jiang Zhao rests his face on his hand and gestures, explaining that Jian Yu said that there is no shame in being afraid of ghosts, so he thinks everything is fine. He tells the girl that if she is scared, then she should not choose the path of the Lord of Spirits. The main character covers a weak smile with his hand and says that he himself was a little scared, but he was very interested. The girl lowers her face, straining her eyebrows. The main character raises his head in surprise, and a woman's hair falls on him. A girl in short shorts appears behind Jiang Zhao and confirms his words. The main character jumps out of his seat in embarrassment and looks at the girl, asking what's wrong with her. The girl straightens her brown hair and introduces herself as Jai Yang. She says that she lives in apartment 1703 and that they can contact her if there is a ghost in their house. The girl takes several decisive steps forward. She raises her head to the main character and looks sternly into his face. She says that he can come at normal times if there are problems. The main character looks thoughtfully ahead with his mouth open. He reasons that if she can help with the ghost, that means she is already a spirit master. Jiang Chang angrily grabs his brother's chin, looking at Jai Yang. She jealously declares that she has 12 holes and they don't need help, and then asks where Jiang Zhao managed to pick up the girl. He says that he doesn't know her at all. Jai Yang tilts his head and stares at the characters, saying that they can do whatever they want, but don't cry when they meet a ghost. Jian Yu enters the office and notices Jai Yang. The teacher states that to become a level 1 spirit lord, they must run 10 kilometers every day, then do 200 squats and 200 push-ups. Jian Yu says he doesn't want his students to die because they run slowly and are overtaken by ghosts. The students go out into the corridor and start running. The main character sits surrounded by his classmates and thinks that he must achieve the goal of becoming a first-level spirit lord as soon as possible. The main character turns to Lao Jian with a stern expression, asking whether there really are no ghosts in Tianji Palace. Jian Yu looks at his disciple with his hands in his pocket and says that Tianji Palace has been passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, and its protective formation is invulnerable to any evil spirits. The main character asks that if this is a very large institution, then why do they need to rent an apartment outside? The man frowns and leans forward with a stern face, declaring that the Tianji Palace's protective formation is created from the primordial souls of the 5 primordial ghosts. He starts talking about other countries, but breaks off with a frightened face and looks ahead. He thinks that because of the main character he almost misspoke. The main character looks at the teacher with a satisfied and happy face and asks him to tell him more about everything. Jian Yu comes from behind and, closing his eyes, says that young people should just focus on training and have no right to know such things. He says goodbye to Zhang Xiao. The main character turns his attentive gaze back. He crosses his legs and covers his face with his hand, grinning. He reasons that Tianji Palace truly lives up to its name, as there are many secrets here. This supernatural world is becoming more and more interesting to him. Zhang Xiao opens the pen. He leans towards the desk and writes something. Jiang Chang wonders what his brother is doing. The girl leans her torso on the desk and looks at the main character while he says that he is trying to collect his thoughts. He asks her what she plans to do and if Jian Yu gave her the pearl as promised. The girl leans her hands on the desk and looks ahead, reasoning that first she wants to become a first-level master, and then she will be given the inheritance from her parents, as Jian Yu said. She adds that when she reaches level 2, she will be given the soul pearl of the hanged ghost. The main character tilts his head and looks at her sternly. He says that the main thing is to improve your strength. He also says that everyone must break through to the first level within the deadline. Jiang Xiao returns to the topic and says that there are many powerful spiritual masters in Skynet, and no supernatural phenomena can happen here. He looks carefully at the piece of paper and says that this is why it is surprising that no one knows about apartment 1701. Jiang Chang looks at him in surprise, his mouth parted. She asks if there is something wrong with this ghost. On the main character's sheet of paper there is a drawing of a plan where there is apartment 1701, Skynet, and then a number of ghosts. He covers the diagram with his hand and says that everything is not so simple. The main character gets up from his desk and says with a smile that in the evening they will find out about everything. In the bathroom in the apartment at that moment a ghost is sitting on the floor, drawing hieroglyphs on everything. She screams for the main character to get out of the house. On the electronic clock on the tablet the time is 23:59. The main character sits on the edge of the bed and watches the time change to midnight. He looks to the side. He notices a girl in an unnatural position. She moves towards him, calling him brother. The girl throws her arms and head up. Black smoke forms around her. You can see her face with a dry mouth and empty eye sockets. She asks if the main character is sleeping. The door handle is actively jerking from side to side. The main character opens the door to the room and finds his sister. He asks why she is not sleeping and if she is hungry. Her lifeless face is directed towards him. The man looks at her with a stern and direct gaze. The door slams in the girl's face. She wonders why he didn't realize she was a ghost. Her pupil twitches sharply. The door in front of her opens again. The main character asks why she is still here. Jiang Xiao's face lights up with a smile and he offers the girl something to eat since she's wandering around in the middle of the night. He quickly grabs Jiang Chang's hand. The main character brings the girl into the room and invites her, saying that his water has just boiled and he will make her noodles. The ghost's eyes turn black and the pupil glows red. Dark clumps appear behind it. The ghost realizes that Jiang Xiao is playing with him. Through the shadows she sees the back of the main character. She becomes furious, her hair rises up like tentacles, and she kicks him out of her house. The main character turns his head with a smile on his face and notices that the ghost is not Jiang Chang. He turns to her and asks her not to talk about it, but to eat noodles. The ghost looks at Jiang Xiao in confusion. She grins angrily, lowering her head and baring her fangs. She spirals into a dark spiral. The main character asks her not to leave. He looks at the ceiling in surprise, standing in the middle of the room. He tells her that if she has any difficulties, he can help her. Jiang Xiao frowns and looks ahead carefully. He thinks that this ghost girl doesn't attack people and wonders what she went through. The day comes and a high-rise building is visible. Jiang Chang screams about the pervert. The main character bursts into her room, opening the door. A girl's pink bra flies into his face. Jiang Chang looks at the guy angrily and frowns. She says she didn't know the guy was like this. She holds another bra in her hands and says there are many similar things hidden under the bed. Jiang Chang turns his back on him and storms off in a rage. The main character does not understand what is happening. He notices that there are many boxes nearby. One of them is open, and there are bras there. He lifts one of them with 2 fingers. Jiang Zhao raises an eyebrow and looks at the underwear in surprise, wondering if the ghost girl decided to take revenge on him. Among a bunch of things, the main character discovers a photo in a frame. It depicts 2 girls, one with curly hair and the other with dark hair. Below in the corner you can see the signature circled in a heart. The main character says that from this photo it is clear that the ghost girl must be Lai Sihan, and next to her is Qin Menjia. The main character notices the number in amazement and wonders if he can contact him. The action moves to Yucheng, an office building. Skyscrapers and modern-style city houses can be seen. A girl with wavy hair is sitting at a long table in an office. The phone rings. She looks at the phone screen in confusion. Jiang Zhao sends a message. His avatar is visible and an offer to talk about Lai Sihan. A girl with curly hair furrows her eyebrows in fear. She quickly types a message asking who he is. Her profile picture shows a mountain and seascape. Their correspondence is visible. Jiang Zhao explains his status, that he studies in the Tianji Palace, and where he lives. He asks to tell what happened to Lai Sihan. The girl's eyes widen and her eyebrows frown. She holds the phone in front of her and ponders Jiang Zhao's words in bewilderment. The girl presses her finger on the video call icon. The main character sits on the bed and looks in surprise at the offer of a video call, accepting it. You can see the girl's worried face with tears in her eyes. She asks to help Lai Sihan find peace, for which she offers a red-level soul pearl. The main character frowns and looks at the phone. He thinks about the offer and realizes that the situation with Lai Sihan should not be easy if he is offered such value. He wonders what the girl's words mean about being played. He states that he does not need the pearl, since he wants to know one thing, whether Lai Sihan was killed and whether it is connected with the Tianji Palace. At the same time, the main character sits, leaning his hand on his knee. The girl looks ahead in surprise. A shadow falls on her forehead. The main character holds out a framed photograph and asks if she recognizes this thing. The girl covers her mouth with her hand, tears welling up in her eyes. She says that she only wants Lai Sihan to be free. She recalls moments from the past, how a girl stood in a skirt in the middle of the city and pointed at something. Her friend says that back then Lai Sihan was still a student who had recently entered Tianji Palace. She was full of hope for the future. However, people from all sorts of places come to the palace, and in addition to those who arrived, there were majors from wealthy families who decided to make themselves known, so Lai Sihan soon noticed several rich people. A poor girl is seen surrounded by a crowd of guys. Next, the boys abuse Lai Sihan. Her friend says they broke straight into the apartment. You can see the poor girl's face, her closed eyes. The friend says that Lai Sihan was forced to expose these people through the internet. Soon the news of what had happened spread. A group of guys are visible in front of a laptop. They are watching a video with Lai Sihan. The shot then changes to a man chasing 3 guys away from the gate. The girl says that the last measure of the Tianji Palace was simply an exception. However, there was no benefit from this. The guys still found means to influence Lai Sihan. Her figure is seen, enclosed in shackles and dark shadows above her. In the end, Lai Sihan was killed and became a wandering ghost, and even the Tianji Palace remained silent on the matter. The girl lies motionless on the floor. Her friend furrows her eyebrows with tears in her eyes. She asks not to delve too deeply into Lai Sihan's case, since even she, as the head of the association, has not been able to help her find peace in all these years, not to mention the desire to take revenge on those people. She asks if the main character thinks about the possible consequences. The main character frowns and looks down. The girl sits at a table. A shadow falls on her face. She says that she is only willing to give him the pearl in exchange for him helping Lai Sihan find peace. She asks him to take care of himself. An inscription appears stating that yin and yang are 2 different paths. Ghosts and people are different. People know that ghosts are scary, and ghosts know that people are poisonous. The main character carefully observes the words that appear. The inscription changes. Now it says that the depravity of a person's heart is worse than anyone else's. But this matter has nothing to do with Jiang Zhao. He will choose the easiest way to kill Lai Sihan's ghost and let her rest in exchange for the red soul pearl. The main character is holding a phone in his hands. He frowns and looks down thoughtfully, reasoning that the ghost girl doesn't look stronger than the other wandering ghosts, so he can easily deal with her. An image of a ghost girl with curly hair appears in his imagination. He doesn't understand why death is the only way to put Lai Sihan to rest. Jiang Zhao reasons that if he chooses the path proposed by Qin Menjia, then how will he be different from the loser he was in his previous life? He concludes that he will use his power and his methods to ensure that Lai Sihan finds true peace. The guy pulls forward a dagger surrounded by a blue aura. It's midnight. The blue glow of the moon is visible through the clouds. The action moves to the bus station of the city of Skynet, where supernatural phenomena are getting worse every day. Parked buses are visible in the dark. Now Tianji Palace decided to intervene. The main character walks through a deserted parking lot, with a long shadow stretching ahead of him. In order to uncover supernatural incidents and enhance students' practical experience in fighting ghosts, a variety of tasks are given daily. The main character looks straight into the darkness. He looks straight ahead and sees a red bus with the number 444, which is haunted. Inside the car you can see dark silhouettes discussing that people are whispering and ghosts are crying. Jiang Zhao steps forward, a shadow moving beneath him. The main character frowns and opens his mouth, declaring that he has arrived. Jiang Zhao is standing right in front of the bus entrance. He turns his head sharply, asking who is there. A sharp movement of the gilded weapon in the air is visible. A guy with blonde hair points a shield at the main character. He asks who he is and what he left here. Jiang Zhao raises his hand and says that he is also studying at Tianji Palace and has also received an assignment for bus 444. The guy with blonde hair smiles relaxedly and asks if the main character is a freshman. He nods affirmatively and points his finger to the side, saying that there must be a ghost on the bus, and since there were no casualties, the palace gave the ghost a green level. If he solved this problem, he could obtain a green level soul pearl, so he decided to give it a try. The blonde guy comes closer and raises an eyebrow. He asks how the protagonist knew about this task, and then tells him to follow his instructions. The main character agrees. The guy with blonde hair closes his eyes and solemnly announces that he is a level 2 spirit lord and that he will take care of the main character as an elder. Jiang Zhao looks at him enthusiastically. The guy looks from the side and smiles slyly, deciding that he will use Jiang Zhao as cannon fodder. The guy turns to Jiang Zhao and states that his name is Zhu Kai and that if he is a sophomore, he should understand what that name means. Characters with gloomy faces enter the bus. The main character internally claims that he knows what this name means. He frowns and looks intensely at the assistant's back. The main character takes a step, getting into the car. He places a 10 yuan bill in the drawer while Zhu Kai retreats to the salon. The driver with stubble on his chin asks you to wait while he changes money. One piece of paper, resembling money, falls. Zhu Kai bares his teeth and looks at her in fear. His body trembles. He watches otherworldly money pouring through the salon. The main character pathetically grabs one of the papers and thanks the driver. Zhu Kai backs away slightly, looking at Jiang Zhao in surprise. He thinks that the main character was not afraid, while he himself almost summoned a spiritual weapon. Zhu Kai looks to the side, frowning. He notices something outside the window. A ghostly woman, surrounded by shadows, boards another bus. Zhu Kai leans back in horror and states that there are ghosts everywhere outside. The driver holds the steering wheel tightly and angrily asks why the passengers shouted, warning them that the bus was leaving. Zhu Kai points out the window and tells the main character that he saw another 444 bus with many ghosts. The main character says that his eyes are simply running wild. Zhu Kai frowns and looks to the side in disbelief. He thinks he will get off at the next stop and directly destroy the car. A blue moon is visible in the night sky. Then the dark edges of the trees. Bus 444 rushes along a winding road. Zhu Kai knocks on the door and asks the driver to stop as he wants to get off at this stop. The bus begins to slow down and the wheels spin. The mechanical door slides to the side. The blonde guy is horrified to see a crowd of ghosts in front of him. They are trying to get on the bus. Their faces are horribly distorted. They surround Zhu Kai from all sides, and he tries to move away in horror. The doors slam shut in the guy's face. He shouts to the driver that he hasn't gotten out yet. The driver turns a gloomy face and asks if Zhu Kai is sure since there is a cemetery nearby. Zhu Kai frowns in horror and opens his mouth wide, asking how there could be passengers in the cemetery in the middle of the night. A crowd of ghosts scatters around the bus. One of them approaches the blonde and asks him to let him through. The main character sits in his place with a calm look. Zukai tenses, sweat running down his face. He thinks that he cannot get off the bus, which is becoming more and more dangerous. He asks in bewilderment how the newcomer can remain so calm when there are ghosts around. The distorted mouth with sparse teeth of one of the ghosts is visible. He extends his long claws to his back and scratches it, saying that he is itching. Jiang Jiao turns to the ghost girl with a naive face and asks him to move to another seat, since she is scratching her bloody skin and he has allergies. The ghost's long claws are visible with chunks of flesh on them. The ghost girl turns towards the salon and moves away from Jiang Jiao. Zukai frowns in horror and looks ahead of himself, reasoning that the main character can communicate with ghosts. A variety of ghosts are visible in different parts of the bus. One of them approaches the blonde man. He reflects that Jiang Jiao managed not only to talk to the ghosts, but also to direct them in his direction. A living shadow forms under the main character's foot. A sign appears saying that Jiang Jiao's friend will get off at the next stop. The main character sits with a serious look. Ghosts stand behind him. The driver behind the wheel of the bus announces that the fuel has run out. A red bus appears with its headlights on. The driver says he will go out and fill the bus with gas, and the rest should sit still. The voices of ghosts are heard asking why the bus stopped. Zukai finds himself in a crowd of angry, nervous ghosts who ask the driver to be faster. The main character faces other ghosts, and wonders why other ghosts came out of the salon. Zukai sits on the floor and clutches his head, screaming about how a mission like this can be green level when this bus is clearly a red level supernatural phenomenon. The main character looks away with a serious look and also thinks that Tianji Palace underestimated the seriousness of bus 444. He thinks that the real ghost of the bus is the driver. The shadowed figure of a man with short hair appears. Zukai looks ahead with crazy eyes and smiles. He thinks about how the driver is going to open the door to get gas, and that this bus is too dangerous to use Jiang Jiao to get out. Zukai suggests they kill the ghosts together and get out. The main character smiles confidently, frowning, and agrees to end it altogether. The main character extends his withered hand with blue smoke coming from it. He throws his hand up while the ghosts are already attacking him. Zukai looks at the main character with a laugh, turning his head. He thinks about how stupid Jiang Jiao is because after summoning the spirit weapon, all the ghosts rush at him. The guy leaves Jiang Jiao to die. Suddenly, a ghost's head without eye sockets and with stitches on its cheeks appears in front of Zukai's face. Zukai jumps back with his shield out, a red glow emanating from it. The character thinks that he needs to just release the rush of blood, hide his yang energy and quickly escape. Blood rush emits a high concentration of blood that masks one's own yang energy. Zukai finds himself behind the ghosts wandering in the red mist. He says that such a skill only lasts 10 seconds, so he can't hesitate and has to get out of here. Zukai breathes heavily and smiles with a frown. He thinks that he needs to get out while the main character distracts the ghosts. A blue glow cuts the air. It suddenly flies straight towards Zukai's back. The guy turns his head, closing one eye. He realizes that a flash of light has come at him. The main character comes out of the fog towards Zukai with his head down. The blonde asks in bewilderment how Jiang Jiao was able to survive the summoning of the spiritual weapon. He asks why the newcomer attacked him. Jiang Jiao looks down at his friend and asks if he remembers a girl named Lai Sihan. Zukai raises his head to the main character in horror, repeating this name. He says that he remembers her because of her he was suspended from Tianji Palace for 2 years. A picture emerges in my imagination of many hands reaching out to Lai Sihan. Zukai clenches his hand into a fist and puts his shield aside. He asks if the main character has come for revenge and says that he will kill him if he blocks his path. Zukai throws his hand forward, his shield lighting up with a white glow. The main character covers his eyes with his hand from the blinding flash and takes the ghost by the collar. He substitutes his body for himself, and Zukai's blow lands on the monster. Jiang Jiao throws out his dagger hand. The main character throws a punch, but Zukai blocks it with his hands. The blonde says he has the bronze skin skill. The main character ironically says that Zukai does not have enough strength to defeat the bronze ghost on his own. He asks if he bought the soul pearl. Zukai's body trembles. He looks at Jiang Jiao with displeasure and admits it. The main character stretches out his hand. A shadow falls on his face. He says that in the market, the bronze ghost soul pearl costs about 130,000, and asks how much Lai Sihan's life cost. The main character grabs the dagger with one hand. He throws his dagger hand forward and says that he will kill Zukai. Jiang Jiao points the tip at him and smiles, declaring that Zukai is good at using bronze skin. He says that without donations, Zukai is nothing. The guy raises his face, covering one eye and squinting. He thinks why the main character's power is so variable. Jiang Xiao turns his back to the lying Zhu Kai and says that if he were him, he wouldn't think about such things since his skill will expire soon, and ironically says that he doesn't know if he will live to see that time. Zhu Kai turns his head towards the ghosts in horror. The buffer time for Blood Rush is 40 seconds and for Daylightning is 25 seconds. He will have to use his bronze skin to keep the monsters at bay. He sees a raging crowd of ugly ghosts. Zhu Kai is horrified and says that his bronze skin will not hold back so many ghosts. Zhu Kai throws himself at the feet of the main character, running away from the ghosts, and asks to save him. The main character turns his head, giving an angry look and declaring that Lai Sihan also asked him for help. Zhu Kai opens her mouth wide in horror and shouts that Lai Sihan is dead anyway. A slap from the main character lands across his face. Zhu Kai grabs the ghost's shoulder. In horror, the guy hits the floor with his face, bowing to the main character. He asks Jiang Xiao to save him, offering to buy a red tier pearl for saving him. The main character tilts his head. His eyes are not visible. He asks you to come to him. Zhu Kai looks at her savior with tears in her eyes and hope. He thanks Jiang Xiao and says that he will repay him. The ghosts claw at Zhu Kai's pants, tearing them as he crawls towards the main character. Zhu Kai stops and looks at the hand extended towards him, pushing him. The main character looks at the guy with surprise and cruelty and says that any action has a consequence, and that this is his payment. Zhu Kai stretches out his hand in desperation as a crowd of ghosts pounces on him. The bus is parked on the site. The main character gets out of the car and looks through the window into the cabin. He says he regrets that he didn't hear the guy's screams. He takes steps to the side, walking away. A ghost in the face of the driver appears behind him. The main character turns around in horror. The ghost asks, "Why kill your own kind?" Jiang Xiao throws out his hand with the dagger in it. The ghost stops the movement of the main character with his hand. He holds the bucket with his other hand. The ghost admits that he is curious because ghosts harm people since people destroy them. But why do people kill their own kind? The ghost lets go of Jiang Xiao's hand, who looks at the creature in front of him in surprise and thinks that it can talk to people. The main character raises his hand and with a confident smile declares that he kills people he doesn't love, without bothering himself with the rules of reason. The ghost throws up his hands, refueling the bus as he does so. He laughs and calls Jiang Xiao an interesting person, admitting that he hasn't felt such a feeling for a long time. The driver turns his face with a distorted smile and says that he would like to take the main character with him on a trip. The main character pulls back a little, noticing with a surprised face that he is only 16 and that he has not yet lived long enough. The ghost stands with his legs spread wide. Jiang Xiao defends himself with a dagger and trembles. He reasons that this ghost is on a completely different level than the white ghosts on the bus, and that he has no chance of winning. The main character lunges. A flash of blue light is visible. The ghost easily dodges the blow. He looks away from his blue eyes and frowns. He says that he has no way to return the main character to his ghostly territory. Ghost asks if Jiang Xiao still has the money he gave him. The main character pats his pockets and nods affirmatively. He shows a paper coin with a hole. The ghost dissolves, turning into vapor, and only his voice is heard, telling him to keep this coin. A row of multi-story buildings can be seen against the background of the night sky. The main character looks ahead, frowning, and sternly says that Zhu Kai is dead and there are 6 more people left to kill. In front of him stands a mirror with the reflection of Lai Sihan's ghost. He asks her not to thank him. The action moves to the classroom. Jian Yu stands at the teacher's lectern in front of the class. He explains that 3 big things have happened recently. Firstly, after discussion in the palace, it was decided that bus 444 would be a red level. He asks the students not to board this bus. Secondly, 4 ghosts appeared in Tianwen City last night, killing 7 girls so far. The main character is distracted and looks at his pocket, where his phone is vibrating. He looks at the phone screen in the messenger and sees messages from Qin Menjia, who asks that Zhu Kai is dead and what pearl he needs. The main character, with a smile on his face, types a message on his phone saying that he needs 1 bronze level pearl and 1 hanged ghost pearl. Jian Yu continues the conversation. The main character looks carefully at the teacher. Jian Yu smiles. The scar on his face is visible. He speaks information for those students who are already masters of spirits of the 1st level, but do not have time to finish. You can see a clear sky with clouds floating in it. A modern building appears against its background. A hall with many columns in wooden style is visible. Jian Yu suggests choosing your 1st soul pearl. The main character stands in the middle of a large archive. Students look at the cells. He thinks about how he didn't expect Tianji Palace to be so generous as to let first-year students choose white tier pearls at will. Several signs are visible on the boxes. On one it is written that there lies the pearl of the soul of a long-tongued ghost, a deformation that contributes to the voluntary stretching of the body. On the second it is written that there lies the pearl of the soul of the ghost of the night roads, demagogy, which allows you to exert mental hypnosis on a person. On the third it is written that there lies the pearl of the soul of the ghost of clay roads, a support that allows you to build thick walls on the surface of the earth. The main character extends his hand to one of the cells. It says on it that there lies the pearl of the soul of a black ghost, black light, which allows you to increase the lethal force against ghosts. Jiang Zhao takes the pearl in his hands and an inscription appears in front of him that if the shadow can absorb one red level soul pearl, then his spiritual weapon will open a new skill. The main character squeezes pearls in his palm and smiles confidently. He thinks that he can force open another skill hole, and that just one red pearl will be enough for this. He spreads his arms out to the sides, covering his eyes, and the inscription changes. Now it says that unlocking the fifth hole requires a fatal level soul pearl, and the sixth skill hole requires a catastrophic level soul pearl. The main character thinks that these pearls are difficult for him now, so it is better to improve his strength first. Jiang Zhao places the pearl in the dagger hole. He says that these pearls seem to have been specially left for him. The soul pearl of the black ghost is absorbed by the spiritual weapon and the skill black light buff is enhanced. The main character swings his dagger, followed by blue stripes. After the spiritual energy absorbed the soul pearl, it expanded 3 more advanced chains. From the pearl there is a link to another pearl and an inscription stating that a bronze ghost soul pearl is needed, while the black light protection increases by 40%. Next, there is a connection to the green pearl and an inscription stating that you need the pearl of the soul of a long-tongued ghost, which increases the range of the black light by 30%. The last blue pearl is a pearl of the soul of a light ghost, which allows you to increase the ability to weaken the enemy. Jiang Cheng runs to the main character, who is examining the dagger. She asks if he has already chosen the pearl. She jumps on Jiang Zhao with her hands on his neck. He replies that he chose the black ghost pearl. The girl puts her hand to her mouth and says that teacher Jian Yu secretly gave her the Miasma Ghost Soul Pearl with the ability the devil drives in circles. After promotion to the second level of Spirit Lord, it will form into shackles. The main character tilts his face back in amazement. He asks if the Soul Pearl has a green level. He says that Jian Yu treats his sister very well. Jiang Cheng holds Jiang Zhao's hand and steps aside. She says that the teacher told her to go to him after absorbing the Ghost's Soul Pearl. The girl invites him to go with him and Jiang Zhao agrees. Jiang Cheng walks towards Jian Yu, with Jai Yang standing behind him. Jian Yu notices Jiang Zhao behind him and frowns in displeasure. The main character waves his hand and smiles. Jian Yu says he called Jiang Cheng to discuss something with her. According to Tianji Palace tradition, after students choose a soul pearl, they begin to form a team of 5 spirit masters. Jiang Cheng confidently declares that she wants to be alone with her brother. Jai Yang throws his hand forward, pointing at the main character, and offers to unite together. Jiang Cheng clings to his brother's hand and raises his fist, asking the girl if she is the instigator. Jai Yang takes the protagonist's hand. She comes closer and lifts Jiang Zhao's hand towards her, smiling. Jiang Cheng starts shouting that the main character will never agree. Jian Yu appears from behind, a shadow falling on his face. He says what the girls may not know is that although they are free to team up, the teacher hopes that the top 5 people in the class can form a team. He furrows his eyebrows slightly and looks at the students carefully. Jian Yu tilts his head, a vein showing on his forehead. He says that students Liu Yuan and Lai Jingming are both geniuses with 8 skill holes and their grades are top-notch. Their families are well off and they will have red level pearls in the future. He says that they will be perfect teammates for Jiang Cheng. Jian Yu turns to Jiang Zhao with a worried face, stating that it will be better for Jiang Cheng if she is with other people on the team. The main character says that he treats his sister much more seriously than his teacher. He looks at the students standing aside and says that he doesn't trust them. The guy with bangs on his face clenches his hand into a fist and asks how someone like Jiang Zhao can look down on them. The guy with long hair states that although their abilities are not as good as Jiang Cheng, they are better compared to Jiang Zhao. The main character waves his head from side to side and asks him to stop arguing. The guy with long hair takes out his bow and points an arrow at Jiang Zhao in anger. It flies in a powerful blue stream towards the main character. He notices this, his pupil narrows. The main character jumps up to his sister with a sharp push. He grabs her by the waist and protects her from the arrow with his dagger. A guy with bangs appears behind the main character and tells him not to look down on him. He raises a huge sledgehammer over their heads. The main character pushes his sister to the side. She flies away in horror. With a sharp movement of his foot, Jiang Zhao knocks the weapon out of his opponent's hands. He sits down on his knee and grabs his hand. A sledgehammer falls between him and the main character. Everyone watches the fight. The main character brings the dagger to the enemy and threatens him. Blue sparks come from the weapon. The guy backs away and asks the teacher for help. Jian Yu looks at them in horror, his mouth slightly open, and says that fighting is prohibited in the group. The main character spreads his hands and looks at the teacher with a smile, offering to arrange a fair competition. Jian Yu closes his eyes, knitting his eyebrows together nervously, and says that he will allow it if the other two students agree. One of the guys clenches his hands into a fist, declaring that he will show him true strength. The guy with long hair grins and says that we should have a team competition. The main character looks down at them and smiles, confidently declaring that they will suffer from his power. The action moves to a huge stadium. Jian Yu stands at the geometric column with his hands in his pockets. The crowd wonders which team will win. The two guys look at each other and discuss how Jiang Zhao has Jiang Chang and Jai Yang on their side and that Liu Yuan's team is also strong. The guy with the bangs points his finger and asks with a grin that there are only 3 of them. He asks if they want to unite with them or if they just decided to give up. The main character points his thumb at himself, smiling broadly, and declares that Jiang Zhao alone is enough to defeat them. Liu Yuan throws his hand forward and frowns, threatening Jiang Zhao. The main character spreads his arms to the sides, teasing the guy. Jian Yu puts his hands out, pushing both teams aside. He says that according to the rules, Jiang Zhao's team must have 5 people. The main character looks towards the stands and notices Zhu Xuan and her friend. Jian Yu jumps onto the pillar and warns them to be careful. Jian Yu looks down at the 2 teams and declares the competition open. Jai Yang covers his face with his hand, putting the other one forward. Jiang Chang covers half of his face with a fan. Zhu Xuan creates an aura around the pearl and says that she has chosen the white cotton ghost soul pearl and is going to become a medical master. Her friend, wearing glasses and braids, holds the mechanism between her hands. She says that she has a pupil ghost pearl needed for reconnaissance. She warns that fighting is not her forte. The main character raises his hand and smiles, saying that there is no need for this, since he alone is enough to win. A crowd of opposing teams with different weapons rushes at the characters. The main character brings the dagger to his face, hiding his smile. Jiang Zhao darts between the guys, leaving them in shock. One of the opponents, grinning, raises his hand to strike. The main character looks at him. With one push he throws the guy aside. He then spins around while the opponent is on the floor. Liu Yuan jumps from behind with a sledgehammer and the main character stabs him in the stomach. The people in the stands watch the battle with delight and say that Jiang Zhao is strong as he fights alone against 5 opponents. The comrade says that the possibilities of pure physical technology have not yet been fully revealed. A green discharge passes through the main character's dagger. He throws his weapon forward, striking his opponent with green lightning. Liu Yuan bares his teeth, squinting in pain. The guy with long hair looks at Liu Yuan lying on the ground and talks about the need for a combination of skills. Liu Yuan orders him to block the actions of the main character. He picks up a bow and fires several arrows at once. They quickly fly towards Jiang Zhao's back as he fights the rest of the opponents. The main character turns his head and sees arrows in horror. They sharply pierce the body of a large guy, who screams in pain. The main character lands on his feet, kicking up dust after bouncing to the side. He throws up a dagger surrounded by a blue aura and mocks his opponents. Liu Yuan points a sledgehammer at the protagonist in anger. He orders him to be clamped down. A crowd of opponents surrounds the main character, who stands in a tense pose. Throwing punches around, the main character fights in the crowd while Jiang Chang watches with excitement. The girl raises her fan and frowns, using the ghost fight skill. Jai Yang grabs her hand, forcing her to lower her fan. Jiang Chang tries to break free, shouting at the girl with a dissatisfied face. Jai Yang says that the main character wanted to defeat the 5 alone, and asks if she believes her brother. Jai Yang turns a calm gaze to the side and tells Jiang Chang to believe in Jiang Zhao. Something falls to the ground next to the main character. He jumps to the side. Jiang Zhao takes a fighting stance while his sister from behind yells at him to be careful. Liu Yuan quickly runs towards him, swinging a sledgehammer. He thinks that the main character has finally shown his shortcomings. Liu Yuan leaps upward, his hammer surrounded by a yellow glow. The main character moves his hand with the dagger back. The weapon is covered with a blue aura. Two energies of different colors collide with each other. There is a strong explosion. Green lightning emanates from the fire. The girls from Jiang Zhao's team shield their faces with their hands. Jiang Cheng asks who won. The smoke slowly dissipates, and a crack in the ground can be seen. The main character stands over the defeated enemy with a proud look and declares that he did not even use all his strength. The opponents run towards their leader while his comrade rushes forward, screaming in a frenzy so that the protagonist does not forget about him. Jiang Zhao's withered hand is seen hanging down. A new puff of smoke appears in the middle of the battlefield. A guy with long hair and a bow walks in the middle of the smoke, looking for the main character. He tells him not to hide and act like a man. The main character appears behind the enemy, putting a dagger to his neck. He says that since the guy called him, he shouldn't regret it. The enemy turns around in amazement. Through the thick clouds of smoke, cries for help can be heard. The smoke clears and Jiang Zhao stands in the middle of a field with enemies scattered everywhere. He raises his eyebrows and looks down with a smile, declaring that it was boring. Jian Yu looks at the main character in surprise, his mouth wide open. Another teacher with long hair and a haori approaches him and asks about Jiang Zhao as a student from Jian Yu's class. Jian Yu folds his hands and bows his head to the teacher, calling him Master Su. He asks why the man came here. The spectators from the stands look in surprise at the appearance of Master Su. Some say that he is the chief spiritual master of Tianji Palace. Another draws attention to his 3-star mark, which means he has defeated 3 ancient-level ghosts. Master Su's face can be seen with an arrogant smile and a mask over his eyes. He says that recently a ghost appeared in the celestial network and he came to deal with it. Master Su points his finger at Jiang Zhao and asks about his name. Jian Yu turns in that direction and introduces the student. He says that the main character is Jiang Cheng's adopted son and just entered school this year. Jiang Zhao's satisfied face can be seen surrounded by his comrades. Master Su looks condescendingly at the character and remembers a man holding a child in his arms. He recognizes Jiang Zhao. The main character raises his head and notices Master Su in surprise. He sees the figures of 2 teachers standing on top of a pillar. Master Su jumps up, leaving a blurry trail in the air. Jiang Zhao's eyes widen and he raises his eyebrows. Master Su suddenly appears right in front of him, and the guy jumps to the side. Master Su says this is their first meeting. The main character looks at the peacefully smiling Master Su, who introduces himself as an old friend of his father and says his name. Master Su mentions the secret of Jiang Zhao's life. He frowns in confusion. Master Su stands confidently in front of a group of students. He invites the main character to arrange a duel, the goal of which is to touch the teacher's clothes. Master Su lowers his head slightly and says with a smile that if the main character wins, he will tell him the secret of his life. Jiang Zhao clenches his hand and frowns, declaring that he will accept the fight, but asks not to cheat. Mentally, the main character says that after moving here he knows too little about the owner of the body, and must find out the secret of his life. Master Su stands with his legs spread wide and his hand behind his back. He says he always keeps his word. The main character takes off. A man with long hair invariably stands straight. The main character tries to approach from the side. He reasons that Master Su is very strong and that even if he uses one hand, he will not be able to win. The main character raises his hand forward, trying to touch the edge of his clothing. He argues that the man underestimates him. He is almost touching the teacher's clothes with his finger. Jiang Zhao instantly leans back. Master Su stands unperturbed. The main character breaks with his hands on the ground, looking at Master Su in front of him, and talks about his powerful spiritual energy, wondering if it has a limit. The main character stops and holds one hand with the other, thinking that a direct blow will not work and another method is needed. The main character's eye and smoke trailing near his face are visible. Master Su looks over his shoulder and notices the fog behind him. The main character falls on top of the master, raising his hand to strike. With one movement of his hand, Master Su pushes away a powerful stream of blue energy. The main character lands on his feet behind him. He looks at the master appraisingly and says that he can repel even his strongest attacks. Sharply throwing his hand forward, Jiang Zhao strives to touch Master Su's clothes. The teacher grabs his hand, squeezing his hand tightly. He looks at him arrogantly and asks about all the skills of the child Jiang Cheng. Master Su admits that he is disappointed. The main character looks at his caught hand in bewilderment. Jiang Zhao clenches his teeth and closes one eye, asking in surprise why Master Su is so strong that the main character cannot escape his grip. Jiang Zhao suddenly flies to the side. Master Su knocks the main character to the ground with a strong push. He falls and lies motionless on the ground. Master Su stands triumphantly in the middle of the platform, smoke emanating from him and Jiang Zhao lying next to him. Jiang Cheng opens his mouth wide in horror and calls out to his brother. Jian Yu jumps off the pillar, the hem of his robe rising up. Jiang Cheng rushes to the side and asks the teacher to call a doctor. The girl leans over the main character and, with tears in her eyes, asks if he is okay. Master Su appears behind the girl and asks to let him look. Jiang Cheng turns around. A man touches the main character's neck with his finger, listening to his pulse. Master Su's eyes widen as he realizes his mistake. The main character suddenly opens his eyes and jumps. With a deft movement, he raises his hand just a few centimeters from Master Su's face. He thinks about the master's true face behind the mask. The dagger is pointed towards the mask on the face. The main character pushes off the ground, but his dagger simply cuts the air. Jiang Zhao tenses his eyebrows in surprise and looks around. He vigorously turns his head from side to side while sitting next to Jiang Cheng. Jiang Zhao asks if Master Su can teleport. People from the stands are also carefully watching around. Master Su finds himself at the highest point of the stadium, watching from above. He looks down with a calm face, pursing his lips, and thinks that this is the first time someone has forced him to use his abilities in this way. Master Su also says that the main character's thoughts are difficult to guess. Jiang Cheng punches the air with her small fists. The main character extends his arms in front of her. The girl reproaches her brother for pretending and making her worry. He admits his wrongdoing and says that Master Su relied on his strength, thus ridiculing him. The main character decided to put him in an awkward position. Jian Yu appears next to them and raises his hand, displeasedly remarking that Jiang Zhao laughed at Master Su. He says that the master has a good heart, so he did not argue with the main character. Jian Yu asks not to disgrace him next time. The man brings his fist to his mouth and closes his eyes. He announces that the fight is over for today and also recognizes Jiang Zhao's team as the winners. In the stadium you can see a lot of people, stretchers, and the figure of a teacher with his arm out to the side. Jian Yu with a stern face turns to the main character and says that since their team has formed, then from now on they should train and cooperate more. The main character raises his hand in a fist. Behind him are Jiang Cheng, Jai Yongzhi, Zhu Xuan and her friend. Jiang Zhao asks the teacher not to worry, as before going to the ghost town of Kangyuan, they will hone their teamwork to perfection. In the darkness of the night, the edge of the building is visible. The main character lies on the bed with his hand to his forehead. He thinks that the head of Tianji Palace is very strong and that in the future he may face a hopeless situation like today. The main character raises his hand above his face, looking at it. He says that if he wants to avenge Lai Sihan, he must become stronger. A wide bracelet with a blue glow appears in Jiang Zhao's hand. Master Su asks him to put it on. The main character jumps up on the bed and turns to the man, asking in amazement how he got into his apartment and why he is giving him the bracelet. Master Su's face is visible in the moonlight. The main character is sitting behind him on the bed. The man says that usually people think about how to touch clothes, but the main character wanted to break the mask. Master Su says that Jiang Zhao's thinking is different and that he has high hopes for him. He also adds that his father is a hero and that he read his diary. Jiang Zhao furrows his eyebrows in confusion and opens his mouth slightly. A chest appears, surrounded by chains, with many seals on it. Master Su reveals that in the ghost town of Fengmen, Jiang Zhao's father sacrificed his life to seal the ghost of Fengmen, thereby saving Yang Cheng from destruction. Master Su turns sideways to the main character and says that his father's dying wish was to return home, at least for a moment. The man hopes that by visiting the ghost town of Fengmeng, Jiang Zhao can fulfill his father's wish. The main character clutches the ring in his hands and frowns. He says that he will definitely go to Fengmen. Master Su turns to the window with his hands behind his back and asks Jiang Zhao to put on the bracelet. The main character puts the bracelet on his hand, thinking that he can use this chance to lead him to the depths of the ghost town. Pulling the bracelet onto his hand, the main character squeezes it with his hand and asks what this trinket is. Master Su says that there are some things Jiang Zhao doesn't need to know, and that he will stay in the heavenly network for 3 weeks, so he asks the protagonist to pack his things and go with him to the ghost town of Kangyuan tomorrow. The main character looks up to Master Su and asks if this is too unexpected. Master Su turns his head to Jiang Zhao and asks if he is afraid. The main character with a joyful smile grabs his bag and says that he will now get ready. He thinks that in Kenyuan it will be much easier for him to get the desired soul pearls by traveling with Master Su. Moreover, it would be much easier for Jiang Zhao to avenge Lai Sihan when the time came. The main character puts his things in a backpack and turns his head to the man who asks him to wait. He says that tonight he must go with him to a place, since the palace instructed him to come here to deal with the ghost. He adds that the password is the ghost driver. At this moment, a picture of a ghost appears in the guise of a driver against the backdrop of a bus and another crowd of ghosts. The station and the sign with number 444 are visible. The ghost woman holds a baby in her arms. The ghost man sits on his lap. The sound of a bus is heard and the ghosts react to it. The car door opens and the gloomy driver orders you to get on the bus immediately. The ghosts take turns boarding the bus. The driver is amazed to see the figure of one of the ghosts being torn into pieces. The ghost tilts his head with a wide smile and frowns. He says that he didn't expect Tianji Palace to send the head of the Middle Palace, an 8th level spirit lord who only has 3 skill holes, but was able to suppress 3 ghosts. Master Su stands in front of the bus in the headlights. He says the ghost thinks highly of him. He reasons that he didn't expect the ghost to end up in the sky's net like this. Master Su concludes that their Tianji Palace is underestimated. The main character watches what is happening from the bushes nearby. The guy pushes the bushes apart with his hands and looks attentively, frowning. He thinks that before coming, he mentioned the 7 levels of ghosts: white, green, red, evil, calamity, catastrophe, and ancient. Phantom Driver deserves to be the oldest. The main character says that he feels pressure even from afar. Black stripes spread across the body of the ghost driver, and he looks at Master Su with a grin. The ghost declares that there is no one here who can stop him. He adds that sooner or later all people will turn into fossils, and they, the ghosts, are freed from the suffering of human life. The driver presses the gas pedal. The bus suddenly starts moving forward, straight towards Master Su. The ghost screams that in the future this world will belong to ghosts. Master Su takes a decisive leap. He jumps forcefully onto the roof of the bus, the hem of his haori fluttering. He says it's ridiculous to try to create a ghost world. Master Su looks down with one leg raised. He states that he is going to correct the ghost's absurd thinking. Master Su hits the ground and it cracks into large pieces. The main character covers his body with his hand. His clothes flutter from the rush of air. He says he needs to move away or else he might get hurt. Jiang Zhao raises his hand to his face, frowning and squinting one eye. He speculates that the bus has disappeared and that the driver was using an unknown ability. Master Su raises one hand up, forming a whirlwind. He says that fighting a ghost is troublesome, but it is not surprising that the owner of the palace allowed him to deal with the monster alone. Master Su calls the big bell. A bell appears on his palm, vibrating from side to side. Waves of yellow energy move away from the bell. Master Su stands motionless. Energy particles spread everywhere. Master Su extends his hand, raising his finger. Energy particles are also emanating from Master Su's body. Wind-blown grass is visible. Then she calms down, freezing. A bird appears through the bushes. The main character holds his hand in front of him and watches the master. The ghost ends up above Master Su, his body shattered. Master Su says that he has guessed his abilities, and although the ghost can travel through time, if space is frozen, he will be forcibly thrown out of it. Master Su puts forward his hand covered in blue aura. The ghost frowns in anger, a green glow emanating from his eyes. He tears his clothes savagely, and a sharp shock wave throws Master Su back. He reflects that the ghost could have reached the peak of the most ancient and got rid of the bonds. A bus appears from a purple portal behind Master Su. The master reaches back and squeezes the bus with force so that sparks fly. Pieces of compressed metal parts fly past Jiang Zhao. Master Su turns around and sees the ghost running away through the air, leaving a trail behind it. The master thinks that the creature wants to escape into the heavenly networks. He addresses the main character, holding a peg in his hands and pushing off from the ground, declaring that Jiang Zhao must kill the ghosts of the bus. The main character raises his hand in surprise and agrees. He doesn't understand what just happened or how the bus ended up in this state. Due to the time stoppage, Jiang Zhao's perception stopped even before the master used his ability. Master Su looks back, noticing the cherry blossom petals next to his face. He lowers his head, legs wide apart, and thinks that this is an illusion. The master raises his hand and puts out his finger, drawing symbols in the air. He orders the illusion to dissipate, and glass shards rain down around the master's figure. The man looks into the darkness of the dense forest and thinks with regret that the ghost's accomplice has already helped him escape. The main character opens his eyes wide in surprise. He wonders if this battle is at the level of the Ancient One. Jiang Zhao says that he cannot intervene because if it were not for the master, the ghost would have already killed him. He regrets that there is still a lot he doesn't know about ghosts. Master Su pushes off the ground and flies into the air. He says that he and the main character will be staying here tonight. The man reports that Jiang Zhao may return after dealing with the ghosts, and warns that they will leave for Kang Yuan tomorrow evening. The main character nervously bites his lips. A shadow falls on his face. A crowd of ghosts is visible behind. Jiang Zhao thinks he is too weak. Turning sharply, the main character with a confident look begins to cut apart the ghosts. He says that he needs to become stronger before going to Kang Yuan. The action is postponed to the next day. In a box standing on the table there is a pearl that gives off a red shine. The main character takes it in his hands and says with a joyful smile that Qin Menjia is really effective because she quickly sent out 2 red-level soul pearls. Jiang Zhao says that he can improve his skills before going to the ghost town. An inscription appears in front of the main character. It says that he has the pearl of the soul of a hanged ghost and that the pearl of the soul of the red level must be fed to the shadows in order to open another hole for the skill. The main character looks at her in surprise, holding a pearl in his hands. He throws her shadow, and it quickly rushes to absorb the pearls. The main character thinks that he can upgrade the green flash to a curse flash using the soul pearl of a hanged ghost, but if he gives it to the shadow, he can gain not only the shackle ability, but also open a new skill hole. He concludes that the more skills the better. Shadow envelops the pearl from all sides. A sharp surge of dark energy develops Jiang Zhao's hair. He admires the strength and feeling left by the red-level soul pearl. A red mark appears on Jiang Zhao's forehead. He clenches his hand into a fist. Stripes of shadow are visible. A glitch-like effect runs through Jiang Zhao's body, and the TV on the wall cracks. The protagonist gains a shackle ability with a maximum range controlled by a diameter of 10 meters, 5 times the gravity, and a duration of 10 seconds. The main character looks at himself in shards of glass. He is surprised at the abilities of the shackles. 5 times gravity can cause most white-level ghosts to slow down, but spiritual power is consumed much faster. The main character grabs his hair, lifting it from his forehead, and looks at the mark. He says that after absorbing the soul pearl of the hanged ghost, he feels changes, which means his power has increased significantly. The shadow forms claws, holding the dagger in front of Jiang Zhao. He sees that the skill hole has also opened. Jiang Zhao takes up the dagger, looking at it with a smile. He says it's time to move on to the branch. The next second, the main character finds himself in a space where he is standing on the hilt of a dagger. He thinks his shadow is too cool. Jiang Zhao kneels down on one knee, taking the pearl out of the casket and bringing it to the hole. The main character says that the demon ghost soul pearl branch should be improved. The next second, a blue flash of light appears above Jiang Zhao. The power of the black soul pearl increases by 40%, and you can attach it to the theme to enhance certain defensive abilities. A chain of pearls appears in front of Jiang Zhao. You need a soul pearl of an iron ghost with the black armor skill, which freezes on the surface of the body and increases protection by 10 times. Requires a fire ghost soul pearl with the hellfire skill, allowing each attack to deal burning damage and reduce the enemy's spiritual power. You need a mirror soul pearl with the Gemini skill. Thanks to it you can form your own clone. Ghosts below the green level will not be able to distinguish a fake from a real person. The duration of the skill is 30 minutes. The main character concludes that the new branch skills are quite good. He extends his hand, from which blue sparks emanate. Jiang Zhao says that with his current strength, even a second-level spirit master is no match for him. The main character raises his hand in a fist, watching the ghost inside the cracked mirror. He tells Ghost Lai Sihen not to worry as he has already done his investigation. Jiang Zhao says that this time they will also go to the ghost town of Kang Yuan for a test. When time passes, Jiang Zhao will make them pay the due price. The action moves to Xiangju, to Mount Sang. A forest and a stone column can be seen. The main character turns to Mr. Su with a question about where the ghost town of Kang Yuan is. Jiang Zhao happily follows behind the calmly walking Master Su. The master reveals that the ghost town of Kang Yuan is an ancient tomb built hundreds of years ago, but later, for some reason, it turned into a ghost town. The master states that he can stay with the protagonist for 2 weeks, and how much he can grow depends only on his own efforts. The main character agrees. They stop, the main character slightly behind Master Su. Before their eyes appears a detachment of people located near the entrance to the cave. 2 people talk to each other while watching strangers. One man says that he has never met the number 1 person in Kang Yuan. Another man says that one of the strangers is an adult and the other is smaller. He suggests that it was some legendary spiritual master who brought the younger family member to practice. A strong man with scars on his arms approaches the main character. He offers to guide the characters to the ghost town. The man explains that their group of spirit lords, Fierce Tiger, are all experts and can guarantee safety in times of trouble. The main character turns to the strong man with a smile and asks how far his group can go. The man sticks out 3 fingers in front of him and says with a grin that the first 3 tombs are nothing special, and then there will be a few evil level ghosts. The man thinks that the guy wouldn't bother evil level ghosts. Jiang Zhao spreads his hands, raising his eyebrows. He says he plans to disturb the evil level ghosts. A strong man moves his angry face towards him. The main character frowns. The man states that the young master came here for the first time and has no idea what an evil level ghost is. He adds that if he meets the ghost, Jiang Zhao will run away. Master Su appears behind the main character. He says that he hasn't met a ghost of such a weak level for a long time. The man behind the characters opens his mouth in surprise and addresses the head of the Tianji Palace. He comes closer and folds his hands, bowing. A man with a beard introduces himself as Lai Mu and greets the characters. Lai Mu is a rank 5 ghost lord and the head of the ghost town. A trembling runs through the body of a strong man. Sweat appears on his face. He thinks that Lai Mu is the spirit lord of Tianji Palace. Then the masked man must be the head of Tianji Palace. The people around the characters begin to bow their heads to greet Master Su. The main character discusses whether the B grade is too high. Lai Mu turns his worried face to Master Su and asks why the palace sent him. Master Su asks them not to be so serious as he is here for a personal matter. A lit flame can be seen in a torch. Master Su raises his hand in front of him, lifting the stone wall of the cave. He says that there are 10 tombs in Kangyuan. Among them, the first 3 tombs have white, green, and red level ghosts, and the next few have higher level ghosts. The characters begin to go down the stairs. The main character looks around. Master Su says that the first tomb is predominantly inhabited by white-level ghosts, so he won't easily interfere further. Master Su adds that the protagonist must rely on his own strength to survive the 2 weeks in the first 3 tombs. The man stops in front of a huge gate and extends his hand. The main character reflects that if he wants to survive, then he must have the strength to defeat the red-level ghosts with his own hands. A cave opens in front of them, illuminated by blue will-o'-the-wisps. Master Su throws Jiang Zhao a dark rectangle with glowing spots. He says that this is a pass with a does curse on it. It is riddled with incredible resentment. This can partially hide the smell of strangers from Jiang Zhao. The main character thinks that it will be good if someone brings it here, since it will be much easier with it in the tomb. Master Su takes steps forward into the cave. He says that the ghosts of the area are the Grave Ghost and the Iron Ghost. Master Su announces his desire for the protagonist to kill 30 Grave Ghosts and 10 iron ones within 3 days. The main character raises his eyebrows in surprise. He says that he remembers how the black light turned into black armor. For this you need the Iron Ghost Soul Pearl. Ghosts appear in front of the characters, crawling on the ground. Master Su says that although these ghosts are white level, they like to gather together, so you shouldn't take them lightly. Master Su says that he doesn't want the main character to get caught in the ghost stream and ask him for help. The master turns to Jiang Zhao, who raises his hand. He asks the head of the palace not to worry. Jiang Zhao takes a step, but his leg is grabbed by something from underground. The main character makes a blow to his hand. A stripe of blue light is visible. Jiang Zhao finds himself surrounded by ghosts rising from the ground. He raises a dagger in front of him and says with a confident face that so many opponents are not enough to defeat him. He makes a powerful push forward, cutting down the ghosts around him. The main character holds his elbow with a smile on his face. He thinks that after absorbing the Hanged Ghost's Soul Pearl, his physical abilities have become much stronger than before. While Jiang Zhao stands relaxed, a huge dark figure appears behind him. The main character turns around, his eyes widen. He quickly jumps to the side and the huge ghost slams the blow to the ground. The main character finds himself on top of the ghost, his legs tucked under him. He reasons that he will receive his Pearl of the Soul. Jiang Zhao falls on the ghost and punches him in the face, looking at the monster in surprise. The main character notices that he has very thick skin. He thinks that this green-level Iron Ghost is really not as easy to deal with as the white-level Grave Ghosts. The main character flips in the air while the ghost swings. Jiang Zhao slides on the ground, squatting. On the other side, 2 ghosts with blades instead of hands are running towards him. The main character moves his hand back, covering it with blue energy. He thinks that if things continue like this, it will attract even more ghosts, so he needs to deal with them as quickly as possible. The main character quickly strikes one of the ghosts in the side. A hole appears in his body, resembling a chip. The main character thinks that only his strongest attack will be effective. A shadow falls on Jiang Zhao's face and he looks up sharply. One of the ghosts brings a blade down on the main character, but he easily blocks the blow. At this moment, another ghost rushes towards him. Jiang Zhao is terrified. He jumps to the side and the ghost hits the air. A ball of dust rises in front of him. It dissipates slightly and Jiang Zhao is visible behind the smoke. He is glad that his strength has increased significantly, otherwise it would be dangerous. Ghosts quickly rush towards the main character. He makes a lot of sideways movements to dodge their attacks. Jiang Zhao thinks that fighting 3 ghosts is impossible and they need to be separated. The main character turns around, holding his shoulder, smoke spreading behind him. Ghosts with fierce faces pass through the fog. Jiang Zhao's face is enveloped in rising fog, only his eye is visible. One of the ghosts looks around in bewilderment, trying to find his opponent. A sharp blow lands directly on the ghost's torso. He falls dead to the ground and a pearl emerges from his body. The main character takes it in his hand, reasoning that if you rely on physical strength, you can save a lot of spiritual energy. The main character squeezes a pearl in his hand. It emits a purple glow. He thinks that he will not use the shackles for now, because even if there is a protracted battle, he will be able to cope with it. The main character brings the pearl to the dagger, inserting it into the hole, and says to improve the black light. Jiang Zhao's body is enveloped in black shadows. Black light improves to black night. A new chain of glowing pearls appears. Among them is the Fenman Ghost Pearl. Ghost armor. You can seal a ghost into the armor and gain part of its abilities, and by sealing more ghosts, you can upgrade to the armor of 100 ghosts, the armor of 10,000 ghosts. Also appearing is the Nightmare Ghost Soul Pearl. Spiritual armor can be turned into a clone. The main character's eye glows through the veil of black shadow. He thinks that these soul pearls are necessary for the 4th stage. Jiang Zhao says that these abilities alone look too amazing, and that if he continues to improve, he is afraid that he will become a monster. Jiang Zhao is wearing armor with a demon mask. He looks at his hands and says that he didn't expect this armor to fit so well. He wants to test her defenses. Ghosts begin to approach the main character. He extends his claw-armored hand and asks him to attack him. The ghosts leap upward, swinging their blades wildly. The blades pass over the main character's body, creating blue sparks. The ghosts look at Jiang Zhao in bewilderment. He raises his head. A purple glow emanates from him. The main character says that they are weak. He grabs one ghost with one hand. He places his other palm on the other ghost. With a sharp blow, he knocks them over, throwing them forward. He then slashes at 2 ghosts at once. They fly apart and smoke rises behind Jiang Zhao. The main character holds 2 soul pearls between his fingers and says that he is done for today. You can see a cauldron with water bubbling inside. The protagonist and Master Su sit in front of the fire and Jiang Zhao counts the soul pearls. Master Su raises his eyebrows and looks at Jiang Zhao seriously. He says that the main character is counting the pearls for the 7th time and that there are exactly 26 of them. The main character smiles naively with his hand behind his head. He says that he has a bad memory and that this amount is not enough, so he should have come back later. Master Su lowers his head, a fire burning in front of him. The main character asks what level the Fenman ghost is. The master replies that it is black. A scale with ghost levels appears behind the man's back. He explains that when ghosts reach the ancient level, their minds can be the same as ordinary people. They can also create ghosts. The black level ghost is more dangerous than the ancient level. The main character turns his surprised face to the master and says that he thought that there were only 7 levels. He asks if there is anyone else more dangerous than a black level ghost. Master Su directly looks at the main character and says that there are such ghosts, but there are only 3 of them. The main character asks in surprise what kind of ghosts these are. Master Su replies that he cannot say. His face is covered with a light shadow. He looks forward and says that everything connected with these ghosts is taboo. Some things he can avoid, but the main character cannot. The master says that even if Jiang Zhao remembers just the name of the ghosts, strange things might start happening at night. The main character looks at the master in horror. His mouth is slightly open in amazement. The master continues his speech, explaining that the world is not as calm as he sees it. He warns that if the main character wants to know more, then he should try to go to high school as soon as possible, and then he will tell him everything. Master Su gets up from the ground and walks towards the tent. He speculates that Jiang Zhao will soon be able to ascend to a 2nd-level Ghost Lord. The man warns that tomorrow they will move on to the next tomb. 2 weeks pass. The main character fights some kind of ghost. He takes out the pearl, holds it in his hands and looks at it. Jiang Jiao says that after breaking through to the second level of Ghost Lords, the spiritual power is enough to maintain the shackles for 15 seconds. He adds that with his current strength, he can hardly kill a hanged ghost since his maximum is a red level ghost. Master Su approaches him from behind. Jiang Jiao turns around. The master says that in the third tomb the main character can already survive alone, and that the test will soon end. He also reveals that he has one more thing to deal with before he leaves. The main character smiles happily and raises his fist, thinking that they will take on a big deal. Master Su orders them to follow him and says that he will show him the deepest part of the ghost city. They go into the 7th tomb. In front of them is a huge gate. Everything is covered with a green glow. Master Su calmly looks forward. The main character stands behind him. He asks if the ghost of Kang Yuan is outside the door. Master Su confirms his words and asks not to go too far from him, since here you need to be careful at every step. The main character spreads his legs wide and looks down. He notices that there is a strong gloomy atmosphere around. Jiang Jiao feels that it will affect his mind if he doesn't pay attention to it. He concludes that a ghost more powerful than the driver's ghost is here. The main character raises his eyebrows in surprise, peering at the spots floating in front of him. He looks in front of him in shock. His eyes glow red. Someone's voice orders him to kill. The main character narrows his eyes. Black highlights appear on the pupils. He begins to agree with the voice. Suddenly his face becomes fierce. A hieroglyph appears in his pupils. His body is enveloped in a red aura. He rushes with a dagger at Master Su, shouting for everyone to die. Master Su jumps to the side. The main character falls to the ground. The master finds himself behind Jiang Jiao. The protagonist's eyes are bloodshot. Master Su says that the ghost of love easily influenced his mind and that training is not enough yet. The master swings his hand, hitting the main character on the back. He tosses his head, rolling his eyes. Master Su again takes out the bell with a yellow glow. He directs it straight to the confused protagonist. The action moves to a room where ghosts are tied to the wall. The main character looks around in horror, not recognizing the place, and notices that it looks a bit like the Tianji Palace. Some man with a bun on his head stands near the corpse. Jiang Jiao looks at him and realizes that the man does not notice him. Suddenly, behind him, a bearded man opens the door. He shouts to Xiao Yuan that the students informed him about using ghosts for research. The man's thick eyebrows are tense as he glares at Xiao Yuan, declaring that he is the best disciple of Qiankun Palace in this century, and that he will even have a chance to enter Sanking Palace in the future. The man says that since childhood he taught his child that ghosts are the sworn enemies of humanity. The guy wipes his dirty hands on a rag, turning to the master. He says that human life has limitations and that he realized this only after the death of his second mentor. He asks what is the meaning of a person's death. The guy turns his head, showing his lifeless eyes, and says that his research was necessary so that he could become immortal like ghosts. A man with a beard grabs things, throwing them around. He states that life and death are a cycle of yin and yang in heaven that cannot be disturbed. He shouts that he will order all the things to be confiscated, and orders Xiao Yuan to reflect on her mistakes, rewriting Taishan Jumalu 1,000 times until she comes to her senses. A black and white photograph of a master with a beard appears before your eyes. Kang Yuanzi bows his head in front of the altar and thinks about how he wanted to enter Sanking Palace. The guy says that even if he fulfills the master's long-standing dream, he will no longer be able to see it, since he is dead. He is crying. His whole body is shaking. Kang Yuanzi says that he will never make the same mistake again, and that he wants to break through the boundaries of life and death, and become an eternal being. He throws his hands up, tears streaming down his cheeks. He declares that this is his path. The guy's face changes, red sparks come from his eyes. He lunges forward, attacking the protagonist, saying that no one will stop him. The main character comes to his senses in horror, sitting on the ground. Above it hangs a golden bell that emits waves. Behind Jiang Jiao sits Master Su with a pearl in his hands. He explains that Jiang Jiao was just affected by the love ghost's aura and lost his mind. The master says that he has already beheaded the ghost. He throws a pearl to the main character, taking the bell and carrying it away. Master Su says that he is giving him this pearl, and that they have stayed too long in this place, ordering him to follow him. The main character walks along a path in ancient Chinese style. A building of the same style appears in front of them. Everything is surrounded by a green haze. They approach the entrance to the house, behind which only darkness is visible. A sealed tomb appears in front of the characters. Master Su looks at her. The main character turns his head to him and asks if the ghost of Kang Yuan is here. Master Su confirms his words. The main character reasons that if his dream is true, then this ghost is from the Tianji Palace. A dragon with a green glow soars above Master Su's head. Master Su orders him to break, and the main character raises his hands to his face in surprise. Master Su puts his hand forward, manipulating the inscription on the seal with his fingers, and gives the order to curb. Master Su looks down at the coffin with a stern face. He says that as long as the Tianji Palace exists, the ghost of Kang Yuan will never want to come out of the black coffin. The master puts his hand to the seal and says that it will last 3 years. The main character asks why it is so difficult to kill a ghost, because in this case he will not pose any danger. Master Su turns to the main character and says that killing is not enough since this ghost is very special. Master Su adds that Jiang Ziao will know about this when he enters the central branch. Master Su moves away from the building. The main character hurries after him. He asks what kind of place is this central branch. Master Su explains that there are 4 branches in Tianji Palace: Southern, Eastern, Western, and Northern. The South branch where it is located is just a corner. A picture of spirit masters fighting in the arena pops up. Master Su says that every year, Tianji Palace holds a competition between the 4 branches, and only the students who win the competition are eligible to enter the central branch. Master Su reiterates that the main character will understand everything once he enters the central branch. A yellow tent can be seen in the middle of the cave. Master Su lowers his head slightly and says he has to go. He offers the protagonist the choice of leaving Kang Yuan with him or staying and waiting for Jiang Yu and the others. The main character follows and says that he will stay, because after seeing a strong ghost, he can no longer idle. Master Su leaves, turning his head slightly towards Jiang Ziao. He says that the main character improves his skills very quickly, but this is not enough. The master says that the main character must become a 3rd-level spirit lord as soon as possible in order to enter the central branch ahead of schedule. Master Su jumps off the ground and disappears. The main character looks towards the forest. He thinks that Jiang Chang and the others will also come soon, so it's time to prepare for revenge. Jiang Ziao reaches into the inner pocket of his sweater. He takes out a photograph of a large man with a cocky face. Jian Yu appears and gives orders to the children. They set up camp and tents. A row of trees and green haze are visible. Zhu Xuan, looking frightened, walks along with the group of girls and admits that she is scared. Jiang Chang says that teacher Jian Yu said before that in the first tomb, most of the ghosts are iron ghosts, so there will be no accidents. Jiang Chang tenses his face, pursing his lips, and thinks that his brother was right, since they had not been told a word about the ghost before. Now that they are here, they won't even respond to their messages. A girl with glasses holds a mechanical sphere and reports that there is little negative energy here, so there should be no ghosts within a radius of 10 meters. She concludes that this is a good camp. Zhu Xuan turns his head towards her. Jiang Chang looks forward with a smile. The girl says to set up tents quickly and try to finish first. Zhu Xuan asks Jai Yang to help her. The girls turn around in surprise and realize that their friend is not there. A dark figure appears. Someone says that this is the first time that several students have taken part in the Ghost Town test. The guy from the photo shows up pointing his finger at himself. He introduces himself as Wu Dai, a 2nd year, and asks to contact him if you need help. Wu Dai is a 2nd-level spirit lord. Zhu Xuan folds his arms across his chest in gratitude. But Jiang Chang replies that they don't need help since people always have to learn to grow up and the 3 of them can feed themselves. The man looks down at the girls, raising his eyebrows. He thinks that before this he asked Yang Rui to investigate and found out that there are 4 beautiful girls in this team, which means the test should be fun. He looks at Zhu Xuan's body, sparkling with a beautiful shine. The guy throws up his hands in front of him and explains that older people should help the younger ones. The main character appears in Wu Dai's face with a grin, saying that high school students really have kind hearts. Jiang Zhao says that the girls on his team are weak and in this case, the high school students should help them set up a tent. Jiang Chang raises his eyebrows in concern and looks at the main character with an innocent face. She asks what Jiang Ziao was doing since he didn't respond to her messages. The main character begins to make excuses that he doesn't know where he left his phone. He says there is something he would like to discuss with his sister, so he asks her to leave. Wu Dai folds his arms over his chest and watches the main character with displeasure. Jiang Zhao reasons that he just posted the news on the school forum, and his opponent was already hooked so soon. The main character stands under a tree with the girls. He cheerfully announces that tomorrow they will go to the 3rd tomb, where the quality of the soul pearls is much better than in the 1st. He adds that this is a good chance to strengthen their team. The girls look at him in surprise and say that the teacher spoke about the danger in the tombs in the depths. The main character and the girl turn towards Wu Dai, who is straightening the tent. Jiang Zhao says that he studied the tomb in advance and there are no dangerous ghosts there. Besides, They have a high school student friend with whom they should be calmer. Jae-young, meanwhile, stands in front of the sealed coffin. She says she finally got to him. The girl holds out her hand and says it's time to release the ghost. She touches the seal with her hand covered in pink aura. Her hand lights up even more, exposing the bone. The hand rips the seal off the coffin and says that it cannot stop it. There are cracks running through the coffin. A large burst of green light comes from him and the ghost screams that he is finally free. A ghost appears with a grin and a skull in his hand. He says that meanness is truly above all things. He calls out to the master, indicating that this is his path. The ghost lowers his green eyes. He looks at Jae-young in front of him, the hem of his robe fluttering. He asks what the current dynasty is and why it freed him. The girl reports that it is now 2020 and she is looking for someone like herself. The ghost looks around and looks at the huge inscription, wondering that 500 years have passed. He turns his head towards Jae-young. A row of sharp teeth is visible. The ghost says that he cast aside his human shell a long time ago, so he is exactly the one the girl is looking for. Jae-young sticks out his long tongue and touches it to his finger, from which smoke comes out. She says that she needs to weigh everything again and asks the ghost to prove that he can do whatever he wants. The ghost's eyes widen and he grins. He says let the current Tianji Palace meet him, Kang Yuanzi. He adds that he will prove everything to the girl by killing her. Skeletons and skulls are scattered on the ground. Wu Dai carries lanterns in his hands and turns to the girls, warning them not to go too far. He explains that the local ghosts are stronger than those in the previous two tombs. A ghost appears in front of Jiang Chang. She shields herself with her hands in horror. The main character easily cuts the ghost in half. He turns to his sister and asks if she is okay. She trembles and declares that this place gets on her nerves because of the constantly jumping out ghosts. She asks Jiang Zhao not to go far. The rest of the girls grab onto the main character and ask him not to leave them too. The main character stands, surrounded on all sides by girls, and says that he cannot take a single step because of them. Guys with dissatisfied faces look at the main character from all sides. They reason that their plan has not yet begun, but Jiang Zhao is already the center of attention. Wu Dai looks at his comrades, turning to them and winking. Those with cruel and insane faces look at the leader. Wu Dai turns to Jiang Zhao with a good-natured face. He asks if the main character has been here before, and if so, then let the girls stay, and he and the main character will go collect soul pearls. Jiang Zhao agrees. The figures of both guys are visible in front of many coffins. The main character turns his head to Wu Dai and explains that it was here that he met the Iron Ghost. Jiang Zhao suggests splitting up. A knife blade flashes behind Wu Dai's back. He thinks that he needs to finish off Jiang Zhao, then all the girls will belong to him and his comrades. Wu Dai cruelly throws the knife forward, swinging at the main character. He intercepts the blade at the last moment and asks what Wu Dai is doing. Wu Dai looks in horror at the withered hand of the main character. A vein is visible on the guy's face. Wu Dai jumps back, sliding on the ground. Jiang Zhao explains that everyone has their own secret, and asks him to tell the secret to Lai Sihan first. Jiang Zhao looks at the knife that fell from his hands. Wu Dai asks what kind of relationship he had with Lai Sihan. Jiang Zhao asks him to admit his guilt. A spiritual weapon appears in Wu Dai's hands, a long braid. With a triumphant and cruel face, he shouts that Lai Sihan was disobedient and says that if the protagonist is obedient, he can live for a few more days. The guy throws his hand to the side. A purple aura comes from the main character's body. Wu Dai calls him an insignificant first-level spirit lord and says that he will show him the difference in strength. The main character puts on his new armor. Wu Dai looks ahead in bewilderment. The main character gets closer, declaring that no one said that he was a first-level spirit lord. Wu Dai is surprised by Jiang Zhao's speed. The main character grabs the enemy by the head and pushes him into the ground, declaring that he is trash. The shadow slides off Jiang Zhao's body and he takes Wu Dai by the collar. He raises his fist and prepares to punch him in the face, declaring that he will teach him to be more reasonable. D gets hit in the cheek and his tooth falls out. The lid of the coffin is visible in the distance. D is on his knees in front of the main character, blood flowing from his mouth. He asks for forgiveness and states that his brothers have already drugged the girls from his team. That is why Wu Dai asks to have pity on him in exchange for the safety of the girls. The main character lands another blow to Wu Dai's face. He with a pitiful face tries to crawl away from Jiang Zhao and asks to save him. The main character looks at Wu Dai and says that he is not going to kill him himself, but has prepared a suitable executioner. The coffin behind him cracks. A ghost covered in a green aura emerges from the rubble. He rushes at Wu Dai. The long tongue of the ghost is visible. It wraps its tongue around the opponent's neck and tries to choke him. Wu Dai doesn't understand why there is a hanged ghost here and asks to save him. The main character stands behind the ghost, watching what is happening. He draws his dagger, killing the creature. With a look of jubilation, he smiles and says that the second goal of revenge has been completed. Girls from his squad run up to the guy. They are concerned and ask if he is okay, as they heard a call for help. Jiang Chang looks at the ghost's corpse in surprise and notices that it belongs to the hanged class. Jiang Chang raises his hand thoughtfully. The other girls stand nearby. Jiang Chang wonders how his brother managed to become so strong in 2 weeks that he can cut through red-level ghosts with ease. The girls thank Jiang Zhao for warning them to beware of their elders. The main character asks with a smile how they are now. Jiang Chang points his finger behind him and says that the girls tied them up and gave them to a herd of grave ghosts. A cry for help from the guys is heard. Birds fly away from the depths of the forest. The main character takes the bag and puts it in his pocket, declaring that it is time to return and that these pearls should last for a while. An inscription appears behind the protagonist's back stating that he is now unaware of the real horror. The main character freezes in surprise, looking back at the inscription.